across the UK, on DAB+, on YouTube, on your mobile, and on your side. This is Talk.
Well, a very good evening. This is Talk. I'm Peter Cardwell. Thank you so much for your company. And we'll be talking about Iran, but we'll mainly be talking about those revelations, earth-shattering revelations about the Mandelson files, what has been through there, the amount of money he asked for as well as the catastrophic misjudgment of the Prime Minister. A sort of apology has come out from Darren Jones, his representative on Earth as Chief Secretary to the Prime Minister. We'll speak to Isabel Oakeshott about that in a second. Also, her exclusive story about my daughter converted to Islam at 14, then she was illegally married at 16. It is a shocker. We'll talk about the pro-Iran hate march, which has been banned wisely by the Home Secretary, and Iran not playing at the World Cup amid the war between the nation and the United States and Israel, of course. On the debate desk, Maxwell Marlowe and Addy 12s will talk about net zero, Churchill to be replaced by wildlife on banknotes. What do you think about that? Who should actually be on the banknotes? 0344 499 1000. We'll talk about the definition of Islamophobia and find out from Carl Turner MP, the Labour MP, who was so vociferously against the changes to the jury system but he didn't vote against it last night. I'll be very interested to find out why. We'll talk to one of our viewers and listeners, Susie, who got in touch with me a few months ago. I've been helping her a little tiny bit behind the scenes about what's happening with her wheelchair. The whole chassis has broken on her wheelchair, and she's been struggling with her housing. There's all sorts of different things that are happening. We're hopefully getting her some help for that. We'll talk about slavery reparations as well. African leaders planning Chagos-style slavery reparations battle with Britain. We'll talk about that too. And is it right to call Donald Trump a liar? Well, that is what Jeremy Bowen, the international editor of the BBC, has done on air. So the question is that the right thing? Should that happen? And should now the political editor of the BBC, for example, should Chris Mason go around calling Keir Starmer a liar? We know he's told lies. So is that all right? Is that just the way things happen now? Or is it just Donald Trump? Is it just Donald Trump who's allowed to be a liar in the BBC's estimation? So much to discuss here on Talk. I'd love to hear your views too. 0344 499 1000. You can text me at 7222 with the word talk in your text. You can tweet me at talkTV. Follow me at Peter Cardwell. You can send me a voice note, less than a minute, please. You can send me a WhatsApp text message, and you can give me a ring, all on the main number, 0344 499 1000. You can also follow me on Instagram if you want to, at Cardwell Peter. So much to discuss between now and 10 o'clock. Stay with us here on Talk. Well, lots to get into, especially what Darren Jones has been saying. He is the Chief Secretary to the Prime Minister and has been speaking to Parliament today about the release of the Mandelson files. We'll get an expert view from Isabel Oakeshott in a second, our international editor. But first, let's hear what Darren Jones said on the release of the first Mandelson files.
On today's release, the documents specifically relate to the decision to appoint Peter Mandelson as Ambassador to the United States and the discussions that subsequently led to his dismissal. These include the Cabinet Office due diligence report, which was passed to number 10 prior to Peter Mandelson's appointment. Information provided to my Right Honourable friend, the Prime Minister, regarding whether full due process was followed during Peter Mandelson's appointment. Papers relating to Peter Mandelson's appointment as His Majesty's Ambassador to the United States, and minutes of meetings relating to the decision to appoint him, and details of the severance payments made to Peter Mandelson after the Prime Minister instructed he be withdrawn as Ambassador, thereby terminating his employment by the civil service.
Darren Jones speaking to Parliament earlier. He also said that the Prime Minister has taken responsibility for the furore over Peter Mandelson. This is what Darren Jones said.
The Prime Minister has taken responsibility for Peter Mandelson's appointment as Ambassador to the United States. He has acknowledged it was a mistake and has apologised, not least for believing Peter Mandelson's lies. There are specific documents that this government would like to have been able to disclose today, but which the Metropolitan Police have asked us not to do so yet. We have agreed to that request. We will therefore publish these documents in the future as soon as the Metropolitan Police have confirmed it will no longer prejudice their investigation.
So we've got a partial picture of this. We were told it's a weirdly rushed appointment. That was the line that Jonathan Powell, the National Security Advisor, talked about. But really, this does not show anybody in a good light here. Mandelson asking for a £500,000 payout in all of this, and a senior advisor thinking it was weirdly rushed, as I said. Also documents containing emails that show Lord Mandelson had a role in arranging a meeting between Blair and Epstein in 2002. Lord Mandelson wrote in 2002, I mentioned to TB, Tony Blair, that Jeffrey is in London next week, and he said he would like to meet him. And this is something that was remarked upon by a senior civil servant in 2002, briefing about the super rich financial advisor ahead of a meeting scheduled that day. It adds close to the Duke of York. Well, don't we know all about that now in the tangled web that has been woven? Let's speak to Isabel Oakeshott, our international editor, about all of this. A damning indictment of Keir Starmer, who's meant to be Mr. Rules, meant to be Mr. Detail. Clearly the rules and the detail was not followed or looked into properly in any of this, Isabel.
Well, ultimately, an appointment of this importance and stature ultimately comes down to a judgment, and it is a judgment. Ministers get given information, and they are then required to make a judgment based on that information. What is very clear from the documents released today is that there were person after person, expert after expert, if you like, warned the Prime Minister as part of that advice they gave him, that this was a reputational risk. Doing this was a risky thing. And yet the Prime Minister decided to go ahead with the appointment. And that quite simply goes to the heart of his own judgment. In no way, shape or form could he claim to have been entirely ignorant of what this might mean for his administration and what it might mean for the UK and for the reputation of our country with this most prominent of diplomatic positions. He quite simply took the judgment that all of that was outweighed by whatever it was he thought Peter Mandelson had to offer. But I think the thing that will stick in most people's minds most strongly is this request for a £500,000 payoff. I mean, almost unbelievable.
I mean, it just shows his brass neck, doesn't it? It's just you've been dismissed in disgrace. Oh, by the way, I'll need £500,000.
It's just extraordinary, and I think it'll make. I mean, of course, he didn't ultimately secure his £500,000, but it was also intriguing to see his concern for his own dignity. I think that was the word that he used in an email. You know, I'm paraphrasing here, basically said, I am most preoccupied with my own dignity and, you know, some privacy from the press as I depart this job. And by the way, I'm still a civil servant. And basically he's saying, you've still got a duty of care to me. And, you know, please, can I have £500,000?
Yes.
You know, someone with a bit more self-awareness might have said, I am most concerned to minimise the fallout for this government and for our country amid this absolute furore. And I apologise profusely for the embarrassment that I've brought everybody. But his first thought was for himself and his pocket.
What does this say about the Prime Minister in terms of his judgment? I mean, he was told there will be a reputational risk. There is a serious issue here. He knew that. He admitted that to Parliament. He knew that the Epstein Mandelson relationship had continued after Epstein had been convicted of being a paedophile. Yet he went ahead and made him ambassador to the United States. We're still not really a lot clearer about why that happened, apart from it being a catastrophic error of judgment. I mean, we have detail around this. We have detail on Mandelson leaving, but there's still many questions about why, in the first place, anybody thought it was a good idea to put Mandelson in there. We've heard all sorts of things about, well, he's, you know, good deal maker, knows trade policy, all the rest of it. Well, I'm sure there are lots of other people who would fit that job description too.
Well, there are certainly lots of other people who would fit that job description and didn't have, as part of their background, multiple resignations from the highest levels of public office.
Yes.
You know, I mean, yeah, once, you know, we can all make significant mistakes, but again and again and again and again, Mandelson has been at the centre of the most uncomfortable political scandals. And then somehow or other, Keir Starmer thought that the pattern would change. I mean, I don't think there's a single other politician I can think of that has resigned so many times and been brought back so many times only to get themselves into a whole new level of pickle. I don't know. Can you think of anyone, Peter?
I can't actually. I can't think of anyone who's come back as many times as Mandelson. He's now resigned, I think, in every decade, certainly the 90s, the 2000s. Certainly he resigned this decade as well. So, I mean, he is just, scandal is just attached to him, and he's a highly risky individual. And also, we don't know that his ambassadorial period was necessarily that good either, or that, I mean, we heard from Trump that he said, oh, I didn't really know him afterwards. Now, Trump, of course, President Trump does disassociate himself from people involved in scandal, but it doesn't seem to be as if he was necessarily even the best person to be ambassador, especially when Karen Pierce, who was the civil servant who was there previously, was seen to be doing an excellent job in Washington.
Yeah, I mean, it was just clearly a highly political and highly personal appointment. And you're right that we still don't know quite what it was that Keir Starmer found so attractive about Peter Mandelson that it somehow outweighed all the glaring and obvious aspects to the appointment that stood to create fireworks and hell and fire and brimstone. You know, what was it about Peter Mandelson that Keir Starmer thought was so indispensable?
Sorry. Isabel, just before you go, I want to talk about your talk exclusive about the daughter who converted to Islam at 14 and then was illegally married at 16. We just want to look at a little bit of this interview. I know the whole thing is on our YouTube channels, on our website as well. Let's have a little look at the clip, and then you can tell us your thoughts on it.
And tell me about how it felt the first time you saw her dressed differently. She was wearing Muslim clothes.
Very mixed emotions, really. A bit of anger in there. Because obviously it just goes against the grain of my family's religion more than anything, you know. So
tell me about the first time that you saw her. She was wearing a burqa.
Yes, yeah, proper burqa, full head scarf, and yeah, it was pretty drastic, if that makes sense.
Quite radical.
Yeah, radical, really.
So Isabel, tell us about the story, tell us what you found. Really, really shocking.
Just imagine that you're a struggling single parent, you're a single dad living down in Portsmouth, trying your absolute best to bring up a young girl. The young girl's mother had various drug problems and was, I think, in and out of in prison at one point. And, you know, this dad was doing his level best to give his daughter a decent upbringing, trying to work hard, you know, make a living and be a decent dad. And what happened was that his daughter, basically, in order to fit in at school in Portsmouth, the school seemed to be full of other girls who were Muslims, and she basically converted to Islam without telling her father. The first he knew of it was when he found, when he was clearing up her room, taking away the old dirty teacups and crisp wrappers that teenagers leave around. He found a copy of the Quran and a prayer mat. Obviously, he was absolutely stunned, but that was just the beginning for him of a series of shocks that culminated in his daughter at the age of just 16, just soon after her 16th birthday. She was married to another 16-year-old Polish Catholic boy who had also converted in a mosque in Northampton. This was an illegal child wedding. And when the father found out, naturally, he hit the roof and the authorities got involved, the police got involved, and the imam who conducted that illegal wedding ceremony was prosecuted and sentenced to 15 weeks in jail for conducting a child marriage. That was a suspended sentence. So I'm happy to say that the young woman is absolutely got her life on track. She's got a great job, and she's been happy for us to share her story because as a warning sign, really, about what can happen.
Yeah. Extraordinary story, and so much digging and great journalism has been done by Isabel Oakeshott there, our international editor. You can see the whole thing on our website and indeed on YouTube if you search for it. I want to speak to Michelle Cutler-Wunsch now, who's Chief Executive of the International Legal Forum, a former Special Envoy for combating anti-Semitism, about this Al-Quds march. Now, this has been banned by the Home Secretary, Shabana Mahmood. Let's just hear from Shabana Mahmood first, the Home Secretary, and what she has said about this, and then we'll go to Michelle. Let's hear what the Home Secretary's been saying.
The Commissioner of the Metropolitan Police, Sir Mark Rowley, has requested a prohibition on processions relating to Al-Quds Day under Section 13 of the Public Order Act. Madam Deputy Speaker, I have consented to that request, placing a ban on these processions for both protesters and counter-protesters that will now last for a month. This is the first ban since 2012.
That is the Home Secretary there, Michelle Cutler-Wunsch, with us now. Michelle, you must be delighted this hate march has been banned. The country is doing the right thing, but there's so much more that could have been done. It's not just a pro-Palestinian march, it's for the Iranian regime as well. So distasteful and so wrong. What are your thoughts on this, Michelle?
I actually think that everybody in the UK should be, in many ways, devastated by this news of the banning of a march, which, as you've said, is directly linked to the criminal Islamic Republic of Iran, with the IRGC not yet prescribed by the UK. I mean, there are so many things that need to be done in addition to banning a march. As I said, the EU has already prescribed, designated the IRGC a terror organization that threatens Britons, that threatens the civilians in the at least more than 20 known attacks and violations that we know that the IRGC is linked to. That same IRGC is responsible for the continued attack on British soil, but also, as we well know, the gross violations that slaughtered thousands, tens of thousands of the people of Iran. And the UK should at the very least make known that they side with the opposition, aiming for a peaceful transition. And finally, we should know that Mujtaba Khamenei, the now sworn in leader, if you will, supreme leader, the son of the butcher of Tehran, is actually an owner of millions of pounds of real estate in London that can be seized, and not to mention
in very exclusive areas, and that property, as you say, should absolutely be seized. We know the Muslim Brotherhood isn't a prescribed organisation in the UK, and neither is the IRGC. I mean, it is astonishing, and it is a scandal that none of those three things have happened.
It is a threat to everybody who cherishes their freedom in the UK. The understanding that the IRGC is responsible for acts of terror, for violence, for intimidation. The understanding that there is still an ambassador of this Islamic Republic in Iran that's actually threatening the UK to sever relations instead of actually being kicked out of the UK. The understanding that there are institutions, schools, charity organizations that are actually, as we speak, radicalizing kids, teens in the UK that are directly linked to that Islamic Republic of Iran. There is much to do in the UK, in addition to banning a march, if you will, which is really very minimal compared to what needs to be done when you realize that that Islamic Republic of Iran is an enemy state. And it's time that the UK treat it as such. And I can't but echo once again Churchill's words. You were given the choice between war and dishonor. You chose dishonor, and you will have war. The IRGC and the Islamic Republic of Iran is an enemy state, and it's time that the UK do much more than ban marches in the streets of London and elsewhere.
Michelle, thank you. We'll talk more on another occasion, I hope. Michelle Cutler-Wunsch there, who's the Chief Executive of the International Legal Forum, former Special Envoy for Combating Anti-Semitism. What do you think about all these topics we're talking about today? About banning the Al-Quds March, about Mandelson and the scandal around him. Stephen Bromsgrove says, my concern is that the release of the government-audited Mandelson papers provides a smokescreen for deeper reasons Starmer appointed him. Don't trust any of them with what they put in the public domain. Dig deeper behind the curtains today as a deflection. Well, we know that the police will release eventually a lot more information, but they've asked the government to hold some of it back. Leslie in Hartley says, what an insult to people struggling to make ends meet. Peter Mandelson be giving 75 grand in case he makes a fuss. No wonder people are so fed up. Well, Leslie, he wanted £500,000. That's what he wanted. Phil in Portsmouth says, good evening, Peter. How can anybody take anything Darren Jones says seriously? He's the one who believes people are turning up on a boat on our shores are mainly women and children. The man is a joke. Dawn says, it's a bit rich, Jeremy Bowen of the BBC calling Trump a liar when his employers accidentally, in inverted commas, edited Trump's speech. Lies, damn lies and statistics, says Dawn. Pete says, publish documents on scandals in the future. Yeah, right. It'll be brushed under the carpet. And Pete says, I hope Trump sues Jeremy Bowen as well for calling him a liar. Well, what do you think about about all of that. 0344 499 1000 is the number to call. We're going to go to the debate desk as we do this time every night. Andy Twelves and Maxwell Marlowe will be with us in just a second. Keep your calls, texts, tweets and voice notes coming in. We'll put some of them to Maxwell and Andy and find out what they think about the big issues of the day, including the banning of this pro-Iran hate march, the World Cup and Iran not playing in that, Churchill to be replaced by wildlife on banknotes, and why net zero has cost Britain more than 125 billion quid this decade. Stay with us here on Talk.
When conflict breaks out anywhere in the world, it has consequences here at home. Talk War is your definitive national security briefing. From the conflict in Ukraine to the tensions in Gaza and the latest escalation with Iran, this is where you'll find comprehensive comment and expert analysis with multiple updates throughout the day. The Talk War podcast from Talk, available on the Talk app or wherever you get your podcasts.
Current affairs, international news, letting criminals off while sending... Oi! Oi! You shut up! I'm trying to record something.
Stand by for 3 powerhouse hours of breaking news, challenging views. I don't give a flying damn about international law. I think people will viscerally reject this.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on YouTube, on your mobile, and on your side. This is Talk.
Thanks to everybody who's been in touch, including Tan in Cambridge, who says, Peter, is there no limit to the amount of taxpayers' money this government is prepared to frivolously give away? I thought the grown-ups were now in the room. This lot can be called the squanderers, or maybe the borrowers, says Tad. Certainly the request, it wasn't given, but the request for Peter Mandelson for £500,000 is definitely angering people. He eventually got a £75,000 payoff for being sacked in disgrace. What do you think of that? 0344 499 1000 is the number to call. We're going to go to the debate desk in a second, but this Al-Quds pro-Iran hate march, there are calls certainly in the papers today, including the Daily Mail here, for it to be banned. Now the Home Secretary has done that. Let's remind ourselves what Shabana Mahmood has said.
Commissioner of the Metropolitan Police, Sir Mark Rowley, has requested a prohibition on processions relating to Al-Quds Day under Section 13 of the Public Order Act. Madam Deputy Speaker, I have consented to that request, placing a ban on these processions for both protesters and counter-protesters that will now last for a month. This is the first ban since 2012.
Well, thank you to Laurie, who's been in touch from Streatham in London, saying apparently the march has been banned, but they're still having a gathering. What's the difference? Well, you can't ban static protests in this country, which is a very silly bit of the law, I think. Whatever you think about this, let me know, as I say, 0344 499 1000. Send me a voice note if you want to, less than a minute, please. We'll go to the debate desk now, and I'm delighted that Maxwell Marlowe, who's Director of Research at the Adam Smith Institute, is with me. Hiya.
Hello, hello.
And Andy Twelve's with us too, the writer and columnist. Andy, should this have been banned?
I think, in principle, I'm anti it. I think when we start to ban protest of any description, you know, the IRGC aren't the prescribed group in the UK, you get down a slippery slope. And, you know, what's next? You know, what pop culture deems unacceptable? Are we going to put pressure on the Home Secretary to ban that? I think it's a slippery slope, and, you know, I think it is positive that this won't be going ahead, but, you know, where does it end?
There is a very interesting point there, and I think the point lies within your point, for me anyway. Why is the IRGC not a prescribed organisation in this country? Why is the Muslim Brotherhood not a banned organisation? So you could go on a street corner, hold up a Ayatollah Ali Khamenei's photograph and say, what a wonderful man, isn't he brilliant, and shouldn't we do everything he does? Yet that is not something that is banned in this country, because you're not supporting an organisation that that is a terrorist organisation in the UK's view. But if you wear a Palestine Action t-shirt, you are. It seems crazy.
Yeah, I think that's when you get into the kind of double standards, two-tier tier, I believe they call it. You know, I think the IRGC and the Muslim Brotherhood should be prescribed, but you know, I think the fact that they've done this without that prescription, it stresses me out. It worries me a little bit because, you know, as I said, what's next?
Maxwell?
I agree entirely. What I find fascinating, though, is the Americans are putting great pressure on the British government to prescribe the Muslim Brotherhood and the IRGC. We can see the damage the IRGC are causing in the Strait of Hormuz. We can see the damage they are obviously causing in the Middle East, and yet for some reason the Home Secretary is not willing to do it. And I think I've said on your show previously, speaking to my friends in DC, people in the State Department genuinely believe that the Muslim Brotherhood are inside of the Home Office and are causing immense amounts of damage. I am actually with that. It makes a lot of sense. We seem to be one of the only Western European liberal democracies who decided not to try and ban these fascistic, evil organisations from proliferating themselves throughout the UK. So I'm happy that the march is not going ahead. I'm worried, though, that that's just all the action the government will do. I mean, they will have only banned, Mark Rowley would only have said, we need to ban this march if there is information he thinks will lead to the breaking of the law. He needs to maintain, with his contacts throughout the UK, you know, continue surveillance on those people who he thinks would have caused this issue. I'm worried this is just going to be a distraction and they'll carry on as business as normal. Yeah,
it's interesting because Palestine Action, which I think should be a prescribed organisation, is that's subject to legal argument at the moment, which continues. Is the government strong, in your opinion, on this issue overall in regard to Iran? Is it right that we stayed out, Andy?
Yeah, I think so. I think, you know, John Healey had a great piece in, he was interviewed by Alva Ray of the New Statesman today, a great piece that they've learnt the lessons from Iraq and they don't want to repeat it. And I think the PMQs that we had last week, not today's PMQs, you know, Kemi Badenoch almost banging the war of drum, you know, trying to bait Keir Starmer into saying that we should have acted sooner, we should have joined the strikes. You know, Reform UK's Richard Tice saying that if he was in government, then they would be joining the strikes. I do not think that we should. I think Keir Starmer actually took the correct decision, and he's in step with what the British people think. Every single poll believes that we shouldn't get involved in Iran.
Although surely there has been a bit of dither and delay in terms of what has happened with the defensive aspects of this. Should we be in Iran or not?
I think we should be in Iran. I mean, let's remember, no one's really in Iran.
Yeah, well, should we be part of this campaign?
Yeah, so I would take a defensive view. I think the dithering is very embarrassing. You know, so we've only just dispatched HMS Dragon. That's taken way too long. I mean, we knew the Americans were coming in early February, and yet we did nothing about it. I think it's been very embarrassing for us, and I don't think the Europeans and our allies in the region are looking favourably on us. I mean, our friends in the Gulf states, the Gulfies as they're known, are really rather miffed off with our approach here. So I think we should do more on the defensive. I really am glad that there's a potential that this evil regime in Tehran is going to fall, but I am worried, as you're right to point out, that we're going to see Iraq all over again. I mean, there's no chance of us invading, boots on the ground to actually install regime change.
Do you think there's any chance of American boots on the ground?
No chance. I don't think that's going to happen at all. The MAGA movement don't want to see this, and I think it's all very well and good. Trump, having airstrikes, fine, that's okay with them somewhat. As soon as he puts American boots on the ground, then I think he's in a whole world of hurt in the run-up to the midterms, because you know exactly what the Democrats are going to say about that.
Listen, thank you for that. I'm just going through a few messages here. Lots of different ideas that people are putting forward. Joanna in Salisbury says, "Hi Cardi P." Hi Joanna. Hate march being banned. So what are the plans when they turn up? How will the police cope? Will they be like the French and get the riot police or military out? It should have been stopped after the 7th of October. Now it is going to be more difficult. Michael says, how much longer are the lapdog Labour MPs going to allow Starmer to humiliate them, and how many of them will convert to Islam to attract votes? Well, we're talking to a Labour MP a little bit later on in the programme. That's Carl Turner. I'm very interested as to why he didn't vote against the Crime and Courts Bill, the Courts and Tribunals Bill, I should say, yesterday, because he was so vociferously against it. So I'm going to talk to him about that, and also this definition of Islamophobia. Darrell in Lincoln says, speaking as a Sunni Muslim, not Shia, anyone reverting to the Islamic religion is not a light converting to the Islamic religion is not a light undertaking. It is easy to do, but not easy to follow, and children and young people should not be allowed without proper adult supervision and guidance. It is irresponsible of an imam to allow it. Just talking about the story that Isabel Oakeshott was doing about two 16-year-olds who were illegally married. Bob says, my wife and I married in 1972. My wife was 16, I was 17. At the end of this month we will celebrate 54 years of a wonderful marriage. Well, many congratulations to you. We bought our first house in 1973 for £3,200. Wow. Have two wonderful children. We could buy a house and be married, but we could not go to an X-rated film. Often the law is just nonsense. If Labour bring the vote in for 16-year-olds, then all other age-related laws should be brought in to reflect that, and a 16-year-old should have no age-related barriers. Marriage, frontline fighting, bus driving, truck driving, smoking, etc., says Bob in Aberdeen. And just finally, from Justin in Hove, says, love the show. The guy who is organising this protest on Sunday is the leader of the Islamic Human Rights Commission. He would be better served looking after the human rights of the people in Iran, since they have none. He said it is a sad day for freedom of expression and if the march is banned. What about the protesters in Iran who were shot and killed for simply wanting change? It's disgusting. I think the name of that organisation is a very, very tasteless joke, Justin, and thank you for pointing that out, Justin in Hove there. So much more to discuss on the debate desk with Andy and with Maxwell, and be sure to send your remarks in too and give me a ring, 0344 499 1000. Stay with us.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on YouTube, on your mobile, and on your side. This is Talk.
Well, thank you to everybody who has been in touch. We'll get to your calls, text, tweets and voice notes in just a minute or two. But I want to talk a bit more about Iran, because they're not going to play at the World Cup amid the war between the nation and the United States and Israel. Interestingly as well, in Australia, we know over the past couple of nights we've been discussing the young women, female players who have defected and are being, well, the offer was there certainly from Donald Trump that they could all go to America. First thing those 5 young women did was take off their headscarves. Maxwell, first of all, Maxwell, Marlowe and Andy 12's on the debate desk. Should Iran play in the World Cup, do you think?
You know, I actually don't know. I don't know. I think they should play in the World Cup. I think that should still be allowed to. I mean, I think, are the North Koreans still allowed to play in the World Cup? You may know more than I do.
They're allowed to. Often they don't.
Yeah. I think they should be allowed to. I think it's in the nature of sport, I think. The same with the Olympics.
Sport's not meant to be political, but then it often is.
Exactly. I think that's the big contention. That's why I haven't really made up my mind on this issue, fundamentally. I would say they should be allowed to play. I do think, though, that I'd be interested to see the celebrations if they did win. What would happen in the UK, for example? What happened to the people who are going to go to the Al-Quds March if you know, Iran won one of the rounds or lost a round? I think that would be interesting. But honestly, I haven't really given it much thought, to be honest.
Andy?
I think they should be allowed to. I don't think they're a very good team, so I don't think they'll get very far. But you know, I think that sport is political. Like culture is, you know, innately political. People are political. I don't think that players should be punished for the actions of their superiors. You know, if Keir Starmer did something nuts, we'd be pretty upset if England were banned from the World Cup.
Well, this is what I always say about Israel. You know, every Israeli is held responsible for the actions of Benjamin Netanyahu. It's be like me saying to either of you, or to people saying to me, I should be held responsible for the actions of Keir Starmer. It's not the case. Similarly, I don't know about you guys, but I quite like to hear, especially in these Iranian women who have defected, what does Gary Lineker think? What does Ian Wright think? You know, what do the Lionesses think? We haven't heard a huge amount from them yet. They tell us their view on absolutely everything else. Let's talk about Churchill to be replaced by wildlife on banknotes. Nigel Farage has been talking about this, the leader of Reform UK. This is what he's been saying.
Our great British banknotes produced by the Bank of England, and they have on them giant figures like Winston Churchill, and yet they're proposing we replace people like him with a picture of a beaver. No, I'm not making it up. This is actually what they're proposing. This is how PC mad and loony everyone's gone, including the Bank of England. I think it's absolutely crackers. But I want to know, please, what do you think?
Maxwell, are you pro-Churchill or pro-beaver?
I'm pro-Churchill. I like Churchill. He's a good guy. No, I think it's rather mad that we chose to even more politicise. It's a weird one. We've either depoliticised the currency entirely, in which case we've politicised it massively. We've seen even Ed Davey, Nigel Farage on the same note here, fundamentally. But at the same time, you know, when we look at our passports, for example, they reflect great things about British industry, British culture, British wildlife. So, I mean, I would keep Churchill on. I'd actually return Adam Smith to the £20 note.
Would you?
I would, of course.
I'm declare your interest.
I'm shocked to hear that. I would return it to that. I think it would be good, actually, if they want to get the people involved just with the digital ID. They're going to have these people's assemblies. I think we should open up to a vote. Who would we choose to put on our notes? You know, I can think of a number of great people who may be forgotten over.
Well, when you ask the British public what they want, they say Booty McBoatface.
I think we should have Poundy McPoundface. I think that sounds fantastic.
Andy, who would you put in the banknote?
Who would I? Probably Clement Attlee. I think he was class. If we're doing prime ministers, I think Clement Attlee was pretty great. I think the new Syrian regime, they redesigned all the money because, you know, obviously they didn't want to sat on it anymore, and they redesigned it with the Syrian wildlife, with the Syrian nature, with, you know, kind of aspects that are non-political of Syria. And I just thought it was really, really beautiful. So I don't mind it. I don't mind it.
Doesn't it say quite a lot about our country that we really can't unite behind even Churchill, even the guy who won the war for us?
I mean, Nigel Farage can't unite behind a beaver. That's sad. He's trying to politicise something that's really not that political. I imagine
this is.
I think it's probably some marketing agency that thought it was a nice idea, and the Bank of England gone, yeah, class.
But when you're removing a symbol like Churchill, you've got to.
I actually have an Iraqi. I just want to hold that up. I've got an Iraqi.
Central Bank of Iraq, 25 dinars. How much is this worth?
That's £0.0001.
Well, there's Saddam Hussein.
Saddam Hussein on the front there.
Wow.
But that's also got a historical event on the back. I'm not sure what it's referencing, but
right.
I think this is a very interesting area. I'm interested in collecting these things. I think they're fantastic. I only got that last week, but I don't know. I also think we should celebrate some of our architecture. I mean, on your background, you've got Big Ben and the House of Parliament, which are currently falling down. Maybe nice to put that on a banknote before it actually does collapse. You know, the Forth
Portcullis
Bridge,
House. That's what we need. That's what we need to put on Portcullis House.
Portcullis House. Right. Not so sure about that one. Well, what do you think we should put on the banknote? Should it be Churchill, or should it be a beaver, or any other political figure, or any other thing that you think symbolises the UK? Whatever your views on this, let me know your thoughts. 0344 499 1000. I'm much more pro Churchill than pro beaver, I must say. Net zero to cost Britain more than £125 billion this decade. Andy, what do you make of this?
Well, I mean, the way that they calculated that, it was a Telegraph story that I read. It's actually not Britain, it's companies, households and government.
It's still a lot of money.
But I mean, how much? They also estimated that the cost of an energy spike, like the one that we saw last week, would cost us as much in 1 week.
Are you for net zero? Do you think it's a good thing?
I think, you know, it's about national sovereignty and about national security. We need to build out our own, get rid of the reliance on things that we just can't control, like Ukraine, like Iran.
We just can't control North Sea oil, though. That's something that we have.
Well, no, it's still pegged to the market.
Well,
you know, we don't just take it.
Yes,
it's still pegged to the market.
Yes, it is, but we have it and we can use it and it's there.
Yeah, but you know, that's a short-term solution. You know, Nick Clegg back in 2010 said that we weren't going to build nuclear energy because we wouldn't have it until the 2020s. I mean, we can't be thinking in such short-termism ideas.
But my problem with net zero is that it's essentially changing the whole economic system, is it not, as well as the energy system. And also, we don't need it. It's an arbitrary target.
Well, so is everything. You know, the Industrial Revolution changed the economic system. The deindustrialisation in the 80s and 90s changed the economic system. It's just a thing of the world that the economic system changes.
That doesn't mean we have to do it, though, does it?
Well, I mean, you know, I think if you go up outside of London into, you know, Mansfield or Ashfield or up to the northeast, where there is no industry anymore, and you say we can build a green industry and we can bring that prosperity back to those towns and villages and those former steel works, you know, I think people are pretty keen on it, to be honest with you.
Maxwell?
I mean, I'm going to disagree with you there. I mean, you've mentioned, for example, the Industrial Revolution in obviously the 1800s, all the way through to what happened, the deindustrialisation of England and Scotland and Wales and Northern Ireland in the 1970s. It's all to do with energy at the end of the day. And the problem with net zero is that it concentrates on essentially just getting us over the line. That's why it's so expensive. It's not about abundance. And I think that's the really concerning thing here. We need to have abundant energy. Look at the Americans. You know, they may, you know, the prices going at the pump. Fine, they still have ginormous reserves of oil and gas. You know, they also have some. They've got other areas of energy. We also look at China as well. They also have huge amounts of energy. That's why they can industrialise so quickly. The issue we've got net zero, yes, it's very expensive, but also we're basically trying to control markets both in energy and industry. And I don't trust the government to do it well. And it's clear they're not doing it well. That's why this oil spike is affecting us the most in Europe. Even though, as you're right to say, Peter, we have huge amounts of reserves in the North Sea, and we spend most of our money and energy buying the same oil off the Norwegians that we could be getting out ourselves. I think it's totally baffling. So I'd scrap net zero. I'd let the market move in the way it wants to. If we want to move towards low carbon, people should be able to purchase low carbon solutions. You should be able to choose where you get your energy from. Is it from windmills? Is it from nuclear? Is it from solar? Or if you want cheaper gas and oil, you can choose that, just as we choose with our cars, just as we choose with what we eat and drink, etc., etc. More choice is a good thing, and I would let the invisible hand of the market actually drive us in the right direction.
I think one thing that really, it stressed me out a little bit when I read the Telegraph piece. You see Claire Coutinho, Kemi Badenoch talking about this, saying that net zero is busting the UK and it's all awful and it's all going to kill us all and bust us all. If only they knew someone who was the business secretary in the last government. If only they knew someone who was the energy secretary in the last government.
They implemented it.
I think it's absolutely...
Theresa May was the Prime Minister when net zero came in.
Well, you can look at, Nigel Farage and Richard Tyson and go, yeah, fair enough, you weren't in government for 15 years. But, these guys were Secretary of State level for a good couple of years in the relevant briefs, and they never said a word. And I just think when they do these press releases, it's just so hypocritical, and I think people see right through it.
They've changed their policy, certainly, and that is a U-turn. Yeah. Alex has been in touch and says any march supporting the Iranian Ayatollah is absolutely wrong. Both Muslim Brotherhood and the IRGC. This is a country that has tried to attack us 20 times in a year that MI5 stopped. It's a terrorist regime that stoned women to death for not wearing a hijab, and it's useful idiots that would march pro-IRGC. They're not patriots for our country, says Alex. Well, thank you for that. Keep your calls coming in, 0344 499 1000, and we'll get to more messages in a second. After the break, we'll talk about the big scandal over Mandelson with Andy and with Maxwell. Stay with us.
conflict breaks out anywhere in the world, it has consequences here at home. Talk War is your definitive national security briefing. From the conflict in Ukraine to the tensions in Gaza and the latest escalation with Iran, this is where you'll find comprehensive comment and expert analysis with multiple updates throughout the day. The Talk War podcast from Talk, available on the Talk app or wherever you get your podcasts.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on YouTube, on your mobile, and on your side. This is Talk.
Well, thanks everybody who has been in touch, including Tad, who says, how about a picture of the Prime Minister on our banknotes? If that's to replicate, then a skunk, a rattlesnake or a rat will suffice, says Tad. Well, thank you for that, and thanks to everybody else who's been in touch. We'll take some calls in a minute or two, but I want to talk about the Peter Mandelson documents because it's the really big story today. I know a lot of people want to talk about it on the phones and so on. Maybe we'll take a call in a minute or two, actually. Maxwell Marlowe and Andy Twelves are still with me on the debate desk. Maxwell, what's your view of this, what we know now versus what we knew 24 hours ago?
I don't think anything's really changed, to be honest. I mean, it's fascinating that Peter Mandelson had the audacity to try and get 500,000.
Very on brand, though, isn't it?
It really is. You know, that's why I say nothing's really changed. But the audacity of the man to say not just that he wants £500,000, but also the top priority for the government should be Peter Mandelson's reputation on returning to the UK. I think it's absolutely baffling.
Tricky if you don't have one.
It's
always, I mean, libel and defamation is something we think about all the time on this station, especially when we have so many contributors and people ring in and things I say and things other people say. And I mean, you can't really defame someone who doesn't have a reputation.
No, I think he has. I think he's. You know, and this is my problem. We're doing political appointments for Crown. For Crown servants. We can't forget.
Should we not do that?
I don't think we should. No, I mean they are civil servants, as we saw from the documents that Ollie Robbins had typed up. He'd said, you know, the
permanent secretary, most senior civil servant at the Foreign Office. Yeah.
Indeed, and he said the ambassador, being an ambassador, from St James's to Washington DC is one of, if not the most high-profile appointments that the British government can make abroad, and we chose to make it political. And I think that is one of the things that differentiates us, for example, from America, where they do make political appointments, and it's a big risk. And I think we should have kept with Dame Karen Pierce, who had brilliant relationships across DC and the White House, and she was very popular. We know that from these documents as well. So I think that's very concerning.
Why do you think that Keir Starmer made the choice? What was the motivating factor here, in your view, given everything we now know?
I knew that Starmer and Trump just were not going to get along fundamentally, and we saw that
as it is proven.
As it's proven, and we can see that. And I think Mandelson was sort of the lubrication between those two quite frictional personalities. Fundamentally, they're not going to agree with each other. We knew that there would be problems with the Trump regime, in DC, and the same as with our regime here in the UK. I think Mandelson was the correct idea of an appointment. The problem is the man himself, obviously completely flawed, and I'm so glad he's gone. But I'm just not shocked at all by these new documents.
Andy, what do you think?
Well, I think on the point about political appointments to Crown servants, I actually can understand the instinct to get a political appointment in there as soon as you can. Dame Karen was, I don't think she was in the posting. I think they had a charged affair. She'd been recalled. So I can understand why you'd want an immediate political appointment. Trump is quite a sporadic guy, and you want someone who understands trade, like Mandelson did. You'd want someone who is loyal to the Labour Party, like Peter Mandelson was, and someone who can kind of do the deft hand and the sweet talk. I think it's a shame that you appointed a man who was known to be friends with a pedo. To be honest.
And actually, he wasn't actually loyal to the Labour Party.
Well,
he said that he was loyal to the Labour Party, but all of these emails that came out, and we need to be careful because he's been arrested, but he's on bail and hasn't been charged yet. But those emails, on the face of it anyway, would indicate a complete lack of loyalty to the Labour government, to Alistair Darling, to Gordon Brown and others around that time.
Yeah, well, I mean, I think it's it's not like we didn't know he was friends with Epstein.
Yeah.
Zara Sultana has posted that picture of Jeffrey Epstein and Peter Mandelson with that birthday cake every single day for the last 5 years. This isn't a secret. And I think one of the things, to get into the Labour Party that was pushed over the last month or so was that it was a soft left conspiracy that the kind of Keir Starmer apparatus and his advisors had tried to push through Peter Mandelson and Russia. And it seems that it's not a soft left conspiracy. And people like Cole Turner, who is coming on later, who said it. It's the truth. It wasn't some great thing to kind of try and undo Keir Starmer. It was the truth. There were irresponsible people in Number 10 who threatened our national security in such, an important ambassadorial role. I think it is absolutely ridiculous that the advisors that Keir Starmer appointed allowed this to happen and enabled it to happen.
Why did they do so, do you think? Were they blinded by the sort of political celebrity status of Mandelson? Because I still can't get to the heart of why this appointment was made. I can see on paper everything you're saying, nothing you say is not correct, trade policy, being a senior figure and so on, but it's so risky. It's so risky. And the whole essence of Starmer is don't take a risk.
Yeah. Well, I think, the people around them, Matthew Doyle, the former director of comms in Number 10, Morgan McSweeney, the former chief of staff, former doing a lot of heavy lifting here. These are deeply political, factional people. Matthew Doyle worked for Tony Blair in the last government. Morgan McSweeney has been dancing around the right wing of the Labour Party for years and years and years. They did the exact same thing when it came to candidate selections in the run-up to the general election. They bent the rules, they pushed people through that shouldn't have been pushed through, and the Labour Party in the country is worse off for it. I think this is exactly true to form of what they were doing in 2022, 2023 and 2024.
Maxwell?
I'm also a fan of Han Landreza, which is cock-up rather than conspiracy. Yeah. I don't think there was any bad blood going in. I think what's really interesting here, though, is that if Mandelson was found to have lied on his CV about, his relationships with Jeffrey Epstein, we wouldn't have to worry about giving him, basically paying him off to hush money. This shows that Keir Starmer knew about the problems, that he knew about the risk, he essentially knew this would eventually come out.
Well, he said in Parliament about a month ago that he was aware of the relationship with Epstein, yet he went ahead and did that. I mean, to me, I think there's a more fundamental issue here, and it slightly comes into what I was saying, Dandy, a second ago, with Starmer, in that he presents himself as Mr. Rules, Mr. Detail, Mr. Procedure, but he hasn't governed in that way at all, actually.
No,
do you agree with that?
Yeah, I mean, in action, it's funny. I say this quite a lot when it comes to some of the big, things that government's asked to do all the time. As I always say, it's a very brave man who says no. It's not a brave man who dithers and then takes no action or takes it too late or makes the wrong decision after dithering. And I think that speaks very much to the heart of Starmer's government, which is that we can see this when bills going through Parliament, for example, things take way too long. It's blocking up a lot of the legislation on issues that people care about. And then we see other issues that people don't care about being pushed through at quite great pace. I think assisted dying, for example, is quite a niche issue. I don't think it affects most people. I don't think most people have a very strong opinion about it, and yet it takes up so much parliamentary time. It's all led fundamentally from Keir Starmer's ideas about this sort of stuff. I think the great irony, our chief politician is just terrible at politics. Politics requires risk, it requires action, and unfortunately just not up to the job.
Andy, do you agree with that?
Yeah, I think there's been a lot of stuff that he's just missed the boat on. Employment rights in this country, renters' rights in this country that have been generationally improved under this Labour government, that a lot of people, a lot of swing voters that would swing from Labour to Reform or not voting to Reform care deeply about.
A lot of people who are employing people don't think the national insurance rises and that those employment rights, the employment rights bill has been a healthy or happy thing.
Sure, but generally speaking, they're very popular issues with your swing voters, and they haven't gone out and beat the drum about those things that beaten the drum that are really, really popular with their base and with swing voters. And the way that he's basically not enabled relationships between the combined authorities out in Greater Manchester, Liverpool, East Midlands, West Midlands, North East, where most of them are Labour mayors. They've not enabled that partnership with the devolved skills, with the devolved funding about transport, with the devolved funding about education. He's just not linked everyone up, and part of it is to do with those factional years between 2020 and 2024. Part of it is he just doesn't get it.
What happens now, do you think, especially looking ahead, less than 2 months now to the local elections and also the Scottish and Welsh elections? What happens now, Andy?
I think, the Labour Party, I'm a member, will probably lose Wales, either to Plaid Cymru or to Reform. The SNP will probably hold Scotland, and Reform will probably be the opposition. We're going to get wiped out across a load of those key seats. Even in London, here where it's a Labour stronghold, I think it'll go some to the Independents, some to the Greens, some to Reform. It is going to be disastrous for the Labour Party, and that off the back of the Gorton and Denton by-election, off the back of the Peter Mandelson issue, off the back of Morgan McSweeney, off the back of jury trials, off the back of every single thing that's gone wrong. I just can't see how Keir Starmer makes it past summer recess. to be
honest. Do you agree with that, Maxwell?
Yeah, and saying that breakfast clubs and free childcare isn't going to push the button for most voters. I think that's the fundamental issue. There are no successes to point to really with this government. Or
maybe there are successes, but they're just not pointing to them, which is slightly Andy's point.
But I think one of the big things, right? So house building. We know there's a housing crisis. We know that Steve Reed, who's the Secretary of State for Housing, has gone out build baby build. The government made a huge thing about building 1.5 million houses. We speak to government people. What do they say? We're done with planning reform. We're done with this Parliament for planning reform. When we had that.
Well, they were never going to build 1.5 million homes. That was just never going to happen.
I think they could have done if they'd done the right thing immediately.
They didn't put Matthew Pennycook in as the minister.
But I think this is the thing, right? They've also moved back the lots of the policy that they wanted to do on housing reform. I think that's just a small microcosm in a ginormous universe of bad policy decisions that have taken too long, and now they'll rue the day fundamentally that they took so long. You're right. I speak to the Labour Party. They are so scared. Total wipeouts across a lot of seats. And you're right to say London's going to go all sorts of ways. I think the Tories will take back Westminster and Kensington. Greens will take a few places. Independents take a few places. It's going to be a terrible day to be wearing a red rosette.
Very, very interesting to talk to you both. Maxwell Marlowe, their Director of Research at the Adam Smith Institute, and Andy Twelves, who's a writer and columnist. Thank you both for coming in for Wednesday's debate desk. Lots to discuss with you. Many people want to get on the phones, and we will take some calls in the next hour. I'm sorry we haven't had the opportunity to do so so far this hour. Matt says, it's like they're trying to cancel the English way in every direction. I mean, when is this madness going to end? They're even taking Churchill off banknotes. I mean, come on. When are we going to stop talking about these problems and actually stand up and say no? Joanna says Starmer couldn't cope with a picture of Maggie Thatcher on his wall, making him inadequate. Let's put Maggie Thatcher on a currency note, on a note that he can't get rid of that easily. Well, he can get rid of any notes he wants. He can put them in my direction if he wants. Claire in Buckley says, I think Maggie Oliver should be in our banknote. She's courageous, brave, and has more backbone than anyone of that shower of a government of ours. And final one from Val. He says, I think it will be a massive own goal for Starmer if he does bring in the vote for 16-year-olds, as they'll be voting for the Greens. A number of people getting in touch about votes of 16-year-olds. We haven't really talked about it this evening, but as always, whatever was on the tip of your tongue, whatever you want to talk about, do give me a ring, drop me a text, whatever you want to do on 0344 499 1000, because this is my show, but it's your show too. Whatever you want to talk about, we will talk about. Carl Turner, the MP, we'll talk to him in just a second, so stay with us.
Across the UK. On DAB+. On YouTube. On your mobile. And on your side. This is Talk.
Well, a very good evening. It's just gone 8 o'clock. This is Talk. I'm Peter Cardwell with you right through until 10 o'clock. There's so much to talk about Iran, Peter Mandelson and the revelations that have come out today. We're also going to talk to a Labour MP in just a second about jury trials and how he voted on that, because I was quite surprised with what happened. We'll talk to Carl Turner in a second. 0344 499 1000 is the number to call. We're also talking about reparations and whether we should pay them to former colonies. That's something that a number of African nations want us to do. We'll have a debate about that a little bit later on. We'll talk to a viewer as well. He got in touch. We've been trying to help her a little bit behind the scenes, but she's having more problems with disability. And I know there are a number of disabled people who watch and listen to this programme, to this station, and we really want to make sure that they have as good a life as possible. The people who are, of course, genuinely disabled, who genuinely need help, and we'll talk about that and what their lives are like. Susie will be with us a little bit later on. 0344 499 1000 is the number to call. You can text me 87222 with the word talk in your text. You can tweet me at talkTV, follow me at Peter Cardwell. You can send me a voice message, less than a minute please. We'll play out as many of those as we can. 0344 499 1000 for that, for phone calls as well, and indeed for WhatsApp text messages. So many ways to get in touch, so many things to say, so many issues to talk about here on Talk between now and 10 o'clock. Stay with me. Well, the Courts and Tribunals Bill, big bill, went through Parliament last night, over 100 majority for the government. 10 Labour MPs voted against it. I was slightly surprised that Carl Turner wasn't on the list that I saw. He is with me now. He's the MP for Hull East. Carl, there's loads I want to talk to you about today, but let's get to the main issue first that we've talked about on a number of occasions. How did you vote? Did you vote? Did you abstain? Or what happened, and why did you come to that conclusion?
I abstained, Peter, and I did that on the basis of strategy. I benefit from the advice of Nicky Da Costa, who was a chief legislative advisor to various Conservative prime ministers. She's been incredibly helpful. But I also had a meeting with Lammy immediately before the vote. And I negotiated with Lammy a seat on the Public Bill Committee from one of our number, on the basis that I would abstain, and I would invite all of the people that I have to abstain as well. I didn't manage that because 10 of my number decided to vote against on a point of principle. I didn't knock them. I didn't seek to persuade them, other than to say in my remarks, it's my view that we abstain at this point. And the reality is this. I'm told now that the whips had let 6 ministers off the whip and had called even the PM back and the Chancellor of the Exchequer. So they thought they were in trouble, but I don't suspect they thought they was in as much trouble as they are now. Now, I've spoken to members of the House of Lords today, and they're telling me this bill's dead. They think it's finished. They think if the abstention in the House of Commons is as big as it was...
So how many abstained in total, Carl?
Well, look, we have a working majority of 169 in the House of Commons, but so the government lost a fairly sizable number. Well, I think on the first division it was 101. I think
that's right. Yeah.
And then fewer than that on the second. So it's a massive number when they can't muster. I think we've got 404 MPs.
That's
now.
right.
We started in 24 with 411. We've lost a few because they're independent and so on. People like Diane Abbott, who frankly should never be suspended from the whip, are suspended. There's a few other colleagues who are suspended as well. The reality was I was confident I could get my rebellion to abstain at this stage, but I wasn't, if I'm being honest with you, Peter, as confident that I could get them to vote the bill down at this point.
So your strategy was to say, right, we're going to get a seat on this public bill committee. I think we disagree on Diane Abbott, by the way, but that's for another day. I just want to read out what Alison in St Albans has said, and maybe you can answer this point. She says, please ask Carl Turner about the reports Labour blocked lawyers from briefing backbenchers about the impact of restrictions on jury trials. Surely this is a freedom of information issue which Labour MPs should insist on, or at least question why the government doesn't want them to know the impact of their reforms. What would you say to Alison? I don't know the truth of that, so maybe you could clarify that.
Let me tell you what my version of the truth is, and let the Labour Party and ministers come back and give their version of the truth. I've been having discussions with the Society of Labour Lawyers. I was the former Shadow Solicitor General and former Attorney General. When I was in those jobs, I relied on the SLL heavily for really good, sound legal advice from very eminent King's Counsel lawyers. The result was the policy decision of the SLL was made and provided to ministers. There was then a meeting of the Society of Labour Lawyers which decided to brief Labour MPs with where they were on policy. There was then an emergency meeting last Friday of the executive where ministers, I'm told, on very good authority, persuaded the executive on this occasion not to provide those briefings to MPs. Now, let me just explain to your listeners what that means. The Society of Labour Lawyers is affiliated to the Labour Party in the same way as some trade unions are. If trade unions had an issue of policy which concerned their members of their unions, they would be briefing Labour MPs, whether government ministers liked it or not.
Yes.
But senior people in the department are ex-chairs and vice-chairs of the Society of Labour Lawyers. And they persuaded the executive of the SLL not to tell Labour MPs what they thought of the policy. But I can tell you what they think of the policy, the same as every criminal lawyer up and down the land. These policies won't make a difference. I just want to briefly address something I should have mentioned earlier. 90% of that bill is desperately necessary.
Okay, it's this particular bit on jury trials.
Yeah, jury trial bill, 90% is desperately necessary. 10%, the magistrate's extended powers, isn't. The jury trial curtailment isn't, and in fact it's more damaging to the justice system than the damage that's already been done for decades.
So
not just the Tories, but for decades.
So, Carl, you
think... you can't vote the full bill down when you need some of it. But on amendment, Peter, at report stage, you can amend out that part of the bill that is particularly bad, like the juries.
And that's what you're hoping to do if you're on this public bill committee, or someone like you is?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah, I don't think we'll move amendments in the Public Bill Committee, by the way, because if you move an amendment in the Public Bill Committee and you lose and the government have got a built-in majority, you can't move it again when it's back on the floor of the House.
It'll be very interesting to see what happens behind the scenes.
You can probe it. You can probe it.
It'll be very interesting to see what happens behind the scenes in that committee as well, and also in the Lords. I think there's a lot more on this. I just want to ask you about the events of today, and I want to play a couple of clips of Darren Jones, who's sort of the Prime Minister's representative on earth. He is the Chief Secretary to the Prime Minister, and he was talking about the release of the first Mandelson files. Let's see what Darren Jones told Parliament today.
On today's release, the documents specifically relate to the decision to appoint Peter Mandelson as Ambassador to the United States and the discussions that subsequently led to his dismissal. These include the Cabinet Office due diligence report, which was passed to number 10 prior to Peter Mandelson's appointment. Information provided to my right honourable friend, the Prime Minister, regarding whether full due process was followed during Peter Mandelson's appointment. Papers relating to Peter Mandelson's appointment as His Majesty's Ambassador to the United States, and minutes of meetings relating to the decision to appoint him. And details of the severance payments made to Peter Mandelson after the Prime Minister instructed he be withdrawn as Ambassador, thereby terminating his employment by the civil service.
Darren Jones also said, in his opinion, the Prime Minister has taken responsibility for the Mandelson affair.
The Prime Minister has taken responsibility for Peter Mandelson's appointment as Ambassador to the United States. He has acknowledged it was a mistake and has apologised, not least for believing Peter Mandelson's lies. There are specific documents that this government would like to have been able to disclose today, but which the Metropolitan Police have asked us not to do so yet. We have agreed to that request. We will therefore publish these documents in the future as soon as the Metropolitan Police have confirmed it will no longer prejudice their investigation.
So Darren Jones explaining what has happened there. There's about there are about 100, nearly 200 different documents in the public domain. Carl, as an MP, as a member of the Labour Party, do you think this has been handled properly today?
Well, the first thing I would say is I'm confused, because the criminal investigation against Peter Mandelson is about malfeasance in public office, where he is suspected of, not alleged yet, but suspected of giving information to individuals which would undermine the position of the country. That's effectively what the suspicion is. Now, that's not about the appointment of Mandelson. So I'm surprised that the Met is saying you can't release information. I think we've been here before when we were saying on the Labour benches, we want all the information in the public domain about what Boris Johnson has or hasn't been up to in his shenanigans in Number 10 during the pandemic. And we were told at that point, well, the Met have said keep some back. Listen, I'm a bit confused, if I'm honest with you. Now, what do I think of this stuff? I think it's mortifying for the Prime Minister. I know Keir Starmer well. He will be absolutely mortified. But
well, why do you think he did it in the first place, Carl? Why would he have appointed Peter Mandelson? I can see all the reasons on paper, but it was a risk, and we know the Prime Minister was warned of the risks over the appointment of Mandelson.
Well, I'm surprised, Peter, because Keir Starmer's cautious, actually. He's terribly cautious.
You're absolutely right, and that's all that we know. I mean, you know him far better than I do, but that's his whole shtick. That's he's Mr. Process, he's Mr. Rules, he's Mr. Caution. But he hasn't shown that in this case, or a number of other cases.
It's not. And what I've been saying from the outset, with little information as it happens, is that the problem the Prime Minister has, in my view, and I say it to him, is that he's over-reliant on poor advice. And the poor advice in this instance was coming from Mr. McSweeney. And Mr. McSweeney was the protégé of Peter Mandelson. So what does he expect the answers to come back from Peter Mandelson to be? I suspect McSweeney was going back in the room with the Prime Minister saying, everything's all right, boss. He's passed the questions you've asked me to ask him, and everything's rosy in the garden. Now, look, it's a political decision, this. Do you appoint Mandelson as the US ambassador? What are the pros of that and what are the cons of that? And I think he was persuaded by the pros. He'd deliver the US trade deal. He'd do this, what I now think, to be honest, with the benefit of a bit more information, this crap deal with Chagos, which I think will end up going in the dustbin, thank goodness, along with the daft idea of doing away with jury trials as well. I think he probably thought, right, he's going to deliver that for me. Look, that's a decision he's made. He's got to live with it. It's mortifying. I feel a bit sorry for him. But at the end of the day, right, if I'm advised by my advisor, my senior parliamentary guy, to do a thing, and I take that advice and it goes badly, I don't throw my advisor under the bus. I take it on the chinny chin chin because I'm a grown-up and I'm the gaffer at the end of the day. I'm the guy getting paid to do the job. My subordinate, who's giving me advice, bless his cottons, doesn't deserve to take any can. That's my view.
Carl, it's an absolutely reasonable view, and thank you very much. Maybe we should start calling you the gaffer. Carl Turner, MP there, the MP for Hull East for Labour. We don't agree on everything, but he talks quite a lot of common sense, certainly on Mandelson and juries on those couple of issues. Graham says, does Mandelson think he's a Premier League football manager demanding the remainder of his contract as compensation? Graham makes that point. I think it's a very, very good point, and it is outrageous that Peter Mandelson wanted £500,000. He got 75,000. Maybe he had some inspiration from The Art of the Deal. Maybe he'd read that book. Go for the big, ask for everything first, and then see what happens there. Philip is in South Wales and has given me a ring on 0344 499 1000. Philip, you're very welcome to the programme. What do you think about Mandelson?
Hello, Peter. Good evening.
Good evening. Hi.
Yes. Yeah, these Mandelson files, if you remember, going back a few weeks ago, Starmer said that if he knew then what he knew now, he would never have employed Mandelson. But he did know.
Well, we know he was warned of the risks of appointing Peter Mandelson. He knew that he had that link with Jeffrey Epstein. He knew that.
He knew. So he's lying. He said he didn't know. He said that Mandelson lied to him. What are the lies?
Well, that's what I want to know. I want to know what are the specific lies in all of this. Where is the smoking gun here? I mean, Mandelson asking for £500,000, the brass neck of that as well. Philip, what do you think?
Unbelievable. I just can't believe it. I can't believe it. Honestly, £500,000. But they still give him 75 grand.
They did. They shouldn't have given him a penny. They should have said, we're sacking you, and if you get sacked, you shouldn't get a payoff. And they're saying, well, we did that to try to stop him suing us for unfair dismissal. I mean, that's outrageous.
So what does it take now for this Prime Minister, who's lying to us all the time, for him to resign?
Well, I don't think that's going to happen anytime soon, although we'll see what happens with those elections. You're in Wales there. Do you think Labour have a hope in the elections for the Welsh Assembly?
Absolutely no chance.
Okay, well, listen, thank you, Philip. Sorry, go ahead.
Yeah, lovely. Yeah. The Labour government is totally out of touch with all the people in Wales as well. The Welsh government as well. They don't know what they're doing.
Okay.
But anyway, thanks, Peter.
Thanks, Philip.
Peter.
Great to talk to you. That's Philip there in South Wales. Dawn in Chelmsford says the obvious person to put on our banknotes is David Attenborough. He'll be 100 this year, believe it or not. We're going to talk more about that with Rafe Haidel-Manku in a second. We'll talk about those banknotes and who do you think should be in the banknotes? 0344 499 1000. Nigel Farage is certainly very annoyed about the fact that Winston Churchill may well be taken off the fiver. So stay with us for that discussion in just a minute.
conflict breaks out anywhere in the world, it has consequences here at home. Talk War is your definitive national security briefing. From the conflict in Ukraine to the tensions in Gaza and the latest escalation with Iran, this is where you'll find comprehensive comment and expert analysis with multiple updates throughout the day. The Talk War podcast from Talk, available on the Talk app or wherever you get your podcasts.
Current affairs, international news, letting criminals off while sending... Oi! Oi! You shut up! I'm trying to record something.
Stand by for 3 powerhouse hours of breaking news, challenging views. I don't give a flying damn about international law. I think people will viscerally reject this.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on YouTube, on your mobile, and on your side. This is Talk.
Thank you to everybody who's got in touch on Twitter. I had a look at my tweets there during the break, and Mackenzie says, Peter, the Green Blob will tell you their project is providing jobs across the UK. Today, how many factories do we have producing windmills and other green kit? How much is being bought off the shelf from China? What happened to UK energy with Jurgen? Has he created any jobs yet? Carol says, how about Peter Cardwell and the banknote? I'm all for that. I'm all for that. Thank you, Carol. One person says, why do these pathetic Labour ministers block people commenting on their posts? Amy says, I think Larry the cat should be in a banknote. He's well liked, he's well known, and the story is a nice one, going from a stray to being a number 10. If only someone would write a book about him, says Amy. Well, Amy, I've often thought the same thing. Nick Lawton says, what does accept full responsibility mean, and what are the consequences in order to deter others? Will they be put in stocks and members of the public permitted to throw rotten eggs and tomatoes at the miscreant? No. Elisa has been in touch from Chelmsford and says, good evening, Peter. I was a copper and I had to police the Al-Quds marches. Of course, I acted with complete professionalism, but emotionally, it was very difficult for me. It was wrong then and it's wrong now. I'm glad the march is cancelled, but I think there should be, I don't think there should be a static gathering either. Would we allow Nazis to hold up signs of Hitler and swastikas? Of course not. So what's the difference? We're at war with the regime. Ban, 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 full stop. Something sinister is happening in government. Otherwise, the IRGC and Muslim Brotherhood would have been prescribed. Well, it's really interesting. I mean, not even the Conservatives did that. I tackled the Priti Patel, who used to be the Home Secretary, about that previously. She also says, Churchill 100% for the banknote, and please stop knocking Netanyahu. I'm not really knocking Netanyahu. I'm simply saying that to hold every Israeli responsible for the actions of Benjamin Netanyahu is absurd, whether you agree with him or whether you don't. But Churchill certainly is something we're going to talk about now with Rafe Hedel-Manku, who's a former director of the International Churchill Society and joins me now. Hi, Rafe.
Hi, great to be with you again.
Yes, indeed. So taking Churchill off the banknotes, I think I can predict your reaction, but what do you think?
Well, this is simply part of the broader war on our history and our culture. Anyone who's been to the Bank of England Museum will know that the Bank of England is already captured by the progressive left. They've got a permanent exhibition on slavery. And this attempt to erase not just Churchill, but all historical figures from our banknotes is part of that left's wider move to actually create, I would say, a year zero by, the best way. Anyone who lived in communist Poland or behind the Iron Curtain or in communist China will know full well that the modus operandi here, because it's right out of the communist playbook. The best way you can demoralize a society and make them ripe for ideological subversion is to separate them between themselves and their past. They denigrate their heroes, rewrite their history, and essentially downplay all of their achievements and say that it has to have had some sort of insidious source, industrial revolution based on slavery, all of this sort of stuff. It's chilling year zero stuff. I like to say that a nation ignorant of its history is like a man with no memory. We need to have symbols around us. Our banknotes are tangible symbols to our past. You erase that history and you have an ignorant nation who are then ripe for new ideologies and new myths to be created. The myth that diversity built Britain. We even had Rishi Sunak holding that up on a 50-pence coin. The myth that Britain's always been a multicultural society. This is the way you achieve a revolution. It's by essentially whitewashing and rewriting the past.
Let's see what Nigel Farage, the leader of Reform UK, said about this.
Our great British banknotes produced by the Bank of England, and they have on them giant figures like Winston Churchill, and yet they're proposing we replace people like him with a picture of a beaver. No, I'm not making it up. This is actually what they're proposing. This is how PC mad and loony everyone's gone, including the Bank of England. I think it's absolutely crackers. But I want to know, please, what do you think?
Rafe, does it really matter who's on our banknotes, especially as so few people actually use banknotes these days? So many transactions are digital, or is there a more fundamental point here?
Yeah, banknotes, along with our coat of arms and our national honours system, these are tangible symbols of sovereignty, symbols of our status and of our national identity. It's telling. One of the first things that was done by communist states like Poland, Romania, Bulgaria, Czechoslovakia after the Iron Curtain collapse was to restore their old symbols, restore their coats of arms, bring back familiar ideology and symbols to their banknotes. It's only new countries that use flora and fauna. Countries that don't have a great history revert to the landscape and wildlife. We are an old country. We have a great history. That's what should be celebrated. And we're given this excuse by the Bank of England. Oh, they consulted the public and actually a majority of them wanted to have wildlife. Well, actually, if you look at the data, what they did is they split the traditional vote between those who wanted historical figures and those who wanted historical buildings, architecture. I would be hard-pressed to choose between those two. If you combine the traditionalist votes, of course it's larger than those who wanted wildlife. And of course, as we all know, when you have a picture of a historical figure, you invariably have a picture of a historical building behind them. Churchill and Parliament, Newton and the Royal Observatory, Christopher Wren and St. Paul's Cathedral, and so on. These are all vitally important ways in which we can ensure that generations have an understanding of who the great figures in our history are. Unfortunately, half of children aged 9 to 12 have ever heard of Churchill, can identify him as our wartime leader. A quarter of young students in secondary school think Churchill is a fictional figure like Sherlock Holmes. And there's no surprise when there's this constant attempt to undermine him and erase his image. We're seeing his statue desecrated. There is a war against our real heroes. And the reason they're going after Churchill, they're going after Nelson, is because they epitomize the very best of Britain. They epitomise that maverick spirit. Churchill is almost the soul of Britain. He is the symbol of that bulldog, defiant spirit of ours. That's why they hate it so much.
Rafe, thank you. Rafe Hadel-Manku there is a former director of the International Churchill Society joining us there. Lots of people want to get in on this, including Elma in Wiltshire. Elma, you're very welcome to the programme. What would you like to say?
Peter.
Hi
Nice
there.
to speak to you.
You too.
I agree with your guest there. In actual fact, I believe.
Elma, I'm sorry to interrupt you. Can you do me a favour and just turn your radio or television down, and then I'll come back to you in a second, I promise. So Elma's going to go and do that, and we'll come back to her in a second. In the meantime, I'm going to go to Debbie in Lincolnshire for her view on this. Debbie, go ahead. You're very welcome to the programme.
Hi, Peter. Thank you for having me. I can't understand what's going on in this country where they just want to keep erasing history. Surely we should be respecting history, and Churchill was a great man. And he was a great man. He got us through the Second World War. So respect where respect is due. The king being on, I agree with what you said earlier, that, who uses cash these days. But the people that do, they're proud of it. And it's nice to see those figureheads. But why do we keep erasing history? And, with his statue being defaced, my mother had an apprentice when she was at Lumpoly, when she was a manager, and the young girl turned around to her and said, Winston Churchill, he was black. And my mum went, why? And she goes, well, his statue's black.
Oh my goodness! Wow. Okay.
I agree with what Rafe just said. Half the population, the younger generation, don't know who these people are.
Maybe the bigger issue, as well as banknotes, and listen, I absolutely think we should keep Churchill on the fiver, but maybe the bigger issue is just basic history for people. We can give up history when you're 14. I did a history degree, and there are loads of things I don't know about British history. I'm not saying I'm an expert, but I do think there are basic things that we need to know. But there's so many people in schools, children in schools now, who aren't taught our basic island story, Debbie.
Exactly. And, like the Holocaust or, everything that's gone on in the past, if you erase history, then there's nothing to learn from not to do it again.
Yeah.
And I think that's quite frightening. I think, history is there to go, right, let's not chop people's heads off going back to the Elizabethan time. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
We learn about stuff, and if you erase it, then there's nothing for people to learn from. And it's quite frightening. But to try and erase people is quite disgusting.
Debbie, you talk a lot of common sense there. Thank you, Debbie in Lincolnshire. Let's go back, as I promised, to Elma in Wiltshire there. Elma, go ahead.
I think Churchill, I agree with your other speakers. I think Churchill is the essence of the British character. And before that, there was other great leaders. We are what we are, and I don't think we should be ashamed of our history. And what worries me is if you're going to get rid of our history, what are they thinking of putting in place of it?
Yeah.
Don't believe. Sorry.
No, you're absolutely right, Elma. And I don't. There are so many things that symbolise Britain. I don't think any animal, particularly, maybe the British bulldog or maybe a lion or something like that. But
he's named after Churchill.
Well, indeed. But there's so many people. There's so many symbols that are being eroded, and I do worry about that. I do worry about the changes in history.
Yeah. And it should be taught in schools. History should be taught in schools. And our history.
Yeah.
We are a brave, wonderful island people. We, with only 50 million people at the time, took so many parts of this globe. All right, it may have not been right to do, but at that time in that day, it was the right thing to do.
Yeah.
The Romans did it. Lots of others done it. We wouldn't do it now.
Yeah.
But that we're being judged. Our past is being judged by now.
Yeah.
That's wrong. That's so wrong.
Really, really good points there, Alma. Thank you for giving me a ring from Wiltshire. I really appreciate that. What do you think about all of this, about Churchill or our banknotes? And thanks to Nat in Tel Aviv, who says, I love you, Peter, but Jack would look better on the banknotes, talking about my cat. I think I'm very happy to keep Churchill on the banknotes and important historical figures. I know Jane Austen's been on the tenner, I think, as well. So there are lots of ways we can celebrate British people, not other things about Britain. We don't need a beaver on there. We don't need animals on there. We need people and symbols of our past. Buildings too, yes, of course, but people who we can be very, very proud of. And Churchill was, of course, voted the greatest Briton ever. Whatever you think about this, whether you think I'm right, whether you think Elma's right, Debbie and Rafe as well, or maybe you disagree, maybe you have another view, 0344 499 1000. Stay with us here on Talk.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on YouTube, on your mobile, and on your side. This is Talk.
Angela's been in touch and says Australia have wildlife on their notes. Doesn't matter. I would hope this isn't the left denigrating our history. Well, lots more to think about in all of that. So do let me know what you think. 0344 499 1000 is the number to call. I want to talk now about someone who's been a big fan of the show, very loyal viewer and listener to my weekend shows and to this show as well, Susie Stone, who is a disabled woman, and we've been in touch a little bit over the past few months, and Susie has been really bravely fighting her illness, but she's been having some serious problems as well. And I really want to bring this story to you because Susie, I think, demonstrates, is a bit of a symbol of how disabled people are treated in this country. I'm not talking about people who aren't disabled, people who pretend, people who take benefits when they shouldn't. I'm talking about people who genuinely have serious disabilities, who really do need our help. And Susie has had a rough time, and last Friday things got even tougher for her. Susie Stone, very good to have you on the programme. Good evening to you.
Good evening, Peter. Nice to be on.
Can you tell me what happened last Friday, Susie?
Last Friday, I was trying to take my dog for a walk. She's little, so she doesn't pull too much or affects the wheelchair. And I was going up a slope and the wheel fell off.
So this is a wheelchair you have. Was this provided by the NHS previously?
No, it was a chair that I had to buy privately.
Yes.
Because the NHS just keep turning me down for an electric wheelchair.
Tell us why you need an electric wheelchair. Just remind us of that.
So I've got fibromyalgia, which is a chronic widespread pain illness. I've also got something called Ehlers-Danlos syndromes. And that basically, it's a genetic disorder that affects all of the soft tissue in your body. So I can easily dislocate joints. Whenever I cut myself or have surgery, it takes far longer for me to heal, far more pain. I've dislocated my jaw from simply sneezing. So things like chewing gum and toffees are completely out of the question. I am an ambulatory user, so I use crutches in the house. But for any long distances, it's a terrible, terrible risk. You can actually see Parker's head. Sorry, poking.
That's all right. Just tell us about what we've been corresponding a little bit about over the last few months as well, Susie. And I know there's a very good local councillor, Richard Wenham, who can't join us this evening, unfortunately, but he's been helping you on a practical level. You've talked to your MP as well. What are you trying to get done? Because I'm really concerned about how people who use NHS wheelchair services are actually being treated in this country. And you're one of them, Susie.
If I can give you some stats. Today in the House of Commons, there was a meeting with regards to disability and wheelchair services. And these are just some of the numbers from the report that they found. So 25% of the UK is disabled, and 64% of people are waiting far longer for any kind of mobility aid, aids in the home, grab rails. They're waiting far longer. In 4 days of the survey going live by the MP Seamus Logan, who's an MP for Aberdeenshire North, 650 people had written in to tell them about their stories. I've got stories from people. I've also been doing my own research. There's a woman who has been fighting for 6 years for her severely disabled and autistic son. He hasn't been able to step out the house.
What is it like? Just tell us about you as well, because with this wheelchair chassis breaking last Friday and the problems you've had previously, you can't live the life you want to live.
I haven't stepped out my house in 11 days.
That must be so demoralising.
I'm a prisoner in my home. I hope and pray that there are no emergencies in my house, no fires, nothing that I need to escape, because I can't get out.
I mean, that's appalling. You've spoken to the NHS about this. What do they say?
Multiple times. They said that they will not give me a chair, even though I tick every single box on their checklist, apart from I cannot get a chair in my home.
Your home, it just doesn't work. The space.
The corridor, the hallway's too small.
Okay.
It can't accommodate a chair. When I was moved here, I had a manual chair. And there's a grab rail outside, and there are grab rails in the bathroom, and I was told it was a disabled friendly apartment. I'm now being told that if I want a chair that I need to move, which, to be honest with you, I don't want to move. I love my neighbours. I've got people that help me constantly, even at the local post office and the shop. When they see me coming and Parker's in my arms, people. I live in a lovely area.
And you don't want to move. And why should you move? Why should you move? Can it work? Could you get a chair that would work with the dimensions that are in your home? And no, it just wouldn't work.
No. And actually, according to today's meeting, there's a shortage of homes that are adapted for people with disabilities. I mean, 74% of people are being left in hospital because they don't have the equipment for these people to get out of their hospital rooms and beds.
Yes.
It's just appalling. An average wheelchair, a motorised average wheelchair, costs on average about £7,000. And when my wheelchair broke, the government were announcing £40,000 for illegal migrants to leave. When I was able to work, I paid my taxes. This is exactly what the NHS is for. It's to help people who are in need of medical assistance. And I believe that every single wheelchair user or disabled person, whether it's hearing aids, there's a lack of hearing aids and adaptability hearing aids, All of these people were being medically neglected by the very organisation that every single person pays tax into. And it's horrendous. We are the last rung on the ladder. We are not being taken seriously. To get a simple no from wheelchair services, or to be told, well, use your Motability money, the bills are going up. Mm-hmm. People are using their Motability money that they're supposed to buy a wheelchair from for things like heating or food. Living on benefits is really difficult. Living with disabilities is so difficult. And not being able to stand outside my apartment to get fresh air. I haven't had fresh air in 11 days. I can't leave.
Absolutely appalling. Listen, Susie, I hope something happens soon. Will you keep us updated about what's going on? I know we're DMing each other, so please do keep me updated. And I know that Richard Wenham has been helpful. Thank you, Susie. Really appreciate you joining us this evening, and we'll talk again, no doubt. That's Susie Stone there. We have contacted the Disability Minister, Stephen Timms. We haven't got a response just yet. Matt Germain is the Labour MP for Watford, who Susie has had a meeting alongside this very good local councillor, Richard Wenham, as well. So if there are developments on that, we'll let you know. But I think what I wanted to bring to you there was just Susie's determination, her intelligence, her ability to put across her case there. It's so straightforward what should happen here, and there's so many blockages and problems in the system that do absolutely need to be sorted out. And disabled people like Susie who've paid their taxes, people who, or even if they haven't, if people are disabled for life, for example, we need to look after people who need to be looked after. I have no truck with people who falsify things. Susie is someone who's an entirely genuine person, and she should be given every help to live her life as productively as she can, to get out and about and to do what she wants to do. It is appalling. Lots to discuss on that, and if you are affected by those issues, give me a shout, 0344 499 1000. We're going to talk in a second about African leaders planning Chagos-style slavery reparations, a battle with us. Should we pay those reparations? Lots to discuss within that. We will have Sunil Sharma, an activist, and Matthew Hulbert, who is a Liberal Democrat activist, who will join us in just a second. Whatever you think on the issue, 0344 499 1000. Stay with us.
When conflict breaks out anywhere in the world, it has consequences here at home. Talk War is your definitive national security briefing. From the conflict in Ukraine to the tensions in Gaza and the latest escalation with Iran, this is where you'll find comprehensive comment and expert analysis with multiple updates throughout the day. The Talk War podcast from Talk, available on the Talk app or wherever you get your podcasts.
Current affairs, international news, letting criminals off while sending... Oi! Oi! You shut up! I'm trying to record something. Stand by for 3 powerhouse hours of breaking news, challenging views. I don't give a flying damn about international law. I think people will viscerally reject this.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on YouTube, on your mobile, and on your side. This is Talk.
Donald Trump is in Kentucky, and we'll bring you a little bit of that if he says anything relevant, certainly on the Iranian war. I know that the economy is a big issue for him, and he will be talking about that fairly soon. We'll keep an eye across that. I also want to talk now about African nations planning a Chagos-inspired legal battle to win slavery reparations from Britain. African Union members are preparing to take former colonial powers to international courts over centuries of slavery and empire, arguing the transatlantic slave trade was a crime against humanity. In 2014, something similar was attempted, and the African Union, or the Caribbean Community, CARICOM, sought reparations for acts of what they call genocide, slavery, slave trading and racial apartheid. They unsuccessfully presented demands to former colonial powers that together transported an estimated 12 million Africans. The campaign aimed at powers such as France, Spain, Portugal and Britain, which acquired slaves, often from slave trading African kingdoms, before shipping them to work on plantations in the Caribbean and wider Americas. Well, let's speak to Sunil Sharma, who's a political commentator, and Matthew Hulbert, who's a Liberal Democrat activist and political commentator. Matthew is going to be on the debate desk with us next week when he's in London. Sunil, firstly, let me start with you. What do you think of this?
I think in no right mind should UK give a single penny when it comes to reparations to African leaders. I mean, first and foremost, Britain abolished slavery. It occurred more than 150 years ago. You know, take the accountability for slavery. Let's look at all the nations that were involved. I mean, pretty much the whole of continent Africa were involved in slavery. We can go as far as the ancient Egyptian, ancient Romans. It just seems like I think people are looking at the opportunity to pounce on the weakness of the current UK government, the weakness in this current leadership, to take advantage of it. And, you know, the slave reparations, who would the money even go to? Because, you know, the people who were enslaved were over 150 years ago. So those people are not alive that can actually benefit from this. So I think it's just another attempt for countries to take advantage of Britain. And unfortunately, take advantage of what we're seeing right now in a very weak leadership.
They would argue, though, that there have been generational problems here, and actually the generations that have come now are still facing a historical wrong here and could be helped.
I disagree. I think Africa's problems aren't because of slavery. You know, you look at the lack of economic development that's happened there, both infrastructure-wise, you know, the biggest problem most people tell you about Africa is levels of corruption. That's got nothing to do with British slavery or the slavery trade. You know, you look at, there's plenty of other countries and plenty of other regions that were deeply affected by slavery and have come out strongly in terms of building their economies going forward. So I think it's quite a lazy attempt for people to try and blame Britain for Africa's lack of success and the issues that they have in terms of just basing it all on slavery. Slavery has affected so many more countries across the world, and I don't think it's fair just to constantly pinpoint Britain on. France have rejected it, other countries have rejected it, Britain should do the same. I think it's just more what we're seeing at the moment is just a constant feeling of British culture having to almost feel sorry for ourselves, having to really talk down Britain. I think this is just adding further fuel to the fire. This is the only place, you know, the West is the only place where it seems like we have to be embarrassed about being British, whereas everywhere else this isn't nowhere near the same situation. I think this is another add-on for that.
Matthew, do you think this is about being embarrassed to be British, or is there more to this, do you think?
Well, good evening, Peter, and to Sunil as well, and of course to your viewers and listeners. And can I say, Peter, congratulations on your new show. It's great to be on for the first time. Look, I mean, I just disagree with Sunil's points there. I think, you know, Britain once ruled over swathes of Africa. We sing that famous song, don't we? Britain rules the waves, Britain shall never be slaves. Well, what about those who were slaves under British colonial rule? And Sunil was quite right that eventually we did do the right things as a country and end slavery. And I say, well, quite right too that we should end that disgraceful practice.
I think the three of us are as one on that, Matthew. The question is, if you're many generations after relatives have been slaves, how do you how would you even administer such a scheme? Would you say that someone who'd moved to this country should get money? What if someone has mixed race heritage and someone who was 12 generations back was a slave, but for the last number of generations they haven't had slaves in their family? I mean, how do you even calculate that?
I think it's difficult. I mean, I agree with you. It's not an easy thing to process, but I mean, it's been suggested that there's a number of ways that this could happen, in the form of debt relief, in the form of development funding, in the form of economic partnerships, and that also sounds perfectly reasonable to me, Peter. And why shouldn't countries that once suffered this great indignity under colonial British rule want justice even all these years later? Why shouldn't they?
Where does the money come from, Matthew?
Where did what money come from, sorry?
Where does the money come from for reparations, or even the economic partnerships that you're talking about? Where does that money come from?
Well, I mean, I guess in the end, it has had to come from government money, and we all know that government money is British taxpayer.
But we're talking about potentially trillions of pounds here. Sunil, what do you make of this?
Yeah, I think it's absurd. I mean, we talk about correcting the wrongs of history. We cannot correct every single wrong that's happened throughout history. But again, it's only Britain that seems to have it's in Britain that we keep having this conversation about. We're talking about slavery. Modern slavery still exists. We're talking about something that happened over 150 years ago. I think that's a much more important conversation that people want to talk about slavery. Modern slavery still exists across the globe. So why are we talking about something that happened over 150 years ago? And more importantly, something that Britain abolished. Britain was the first nation across the globe to abolish slavery. Didn't come from Africa, didn't come from anywhere else. It was Britain. And I think it's really unfair now to ask current British taxpayers to fund slave reparations that they have absolutely no involvement with. And I think we have to be honest in terms of when we look at some of the post-colonial countries, in terms of, in particular, Africa and other nations, the reason for the lack of success isn't purely based on slavery. We know for a fact there's been poor governance. We know that there's higher levels of corruption. And there are examples of other post-colonial countries doing extremely well. You look at India as becoming one of the fastest growing economies, and they're constantly growing. This idea of just constantly blaming Britain for past wrongs, it's really unfair. And I think
it's a fair point there, isn't it, Matthew, to say that there are some colonial countries doing badly, some doing well, and also given if you're going to pay the money, it's going to come from people who have nothing to do with the sins of their many generations previously forefathers.
Absolutely. And I mean, Sunil makes some good points there, but I think they're separate to the argument, the debate that we're having. Yes, modern slavery exists. I used to be involved with an organisation called Stop the Traffic, which was about trying to stop human trafficking. It's absolutely appalling. But I think we can walk and chew gum at the same time. And as I say, I don't think it's unreasonable for these African countries who suffered this indignity under British rule to want to have that corrected.
Would you give it to China as well? Would you give it to China as well, Matthew? Sorry, to India? Would you give it to India as well?
Well, I mean, I think these are questions that the governments are going to have to.
Well, what's the question for you? I'm asking you the question. If a country is doing well, like India, for example, major global power, should they be treated in exactly the same way as a country that's struggling?
Well, I think it's hard to argue that this, depends on how well you're doing as a country. If you're trying to right a historic injustice, then you right that regardless of current circumstances.
But you're talking about a major amount of money here. You're talking about an economy under pressure. You're talking about people alive now who had nothing to do, and I'm sure all three of us absolutely, and every single viewer and listener absolutely abhor what happened during the slave trade and wouldn't want to in any way have it continue. And your points about modern slavery are good ones, both of you. But the point is that you're essentially saying, Matthew, are you not, to hard up taxpayers now, you've got to pay more for something that wasn't your fault, that you had nothing to do with, and is totally arbitrary anyway?
I just don't like the concept, Peter, that seems to be kind of being suggested at the edges here, that Britain is beyond criticism.
At what point? Matthew, I sit here 3 hours a night and criticise everything that's going on in Britain. Come on.
Yeah, well, I think you may criticise the current government, but I think there's kind of, an idea that Britain's history is beyond criticism. It isn't. Some of what we did a lot of good, but some of what we did palpably wrong.
Okay, hold on. Do you think people are arguing that, Sunil? I'm not sure they are.
No, I honestly think right now we have the opposite problem where you can't say anything good about Britain. We have to talk about all the guilt, all the bad things Britain has done. We can never talk about the good. Because if you do, maybe I can because my skin colour isn't white, so it's a bit easier for me. But I feel like if most people cannot talk about the good things of Britain, because straight away you have to talk about slavery, straight away you've got to talk about all the wrongs that Britain's done. You've got to talk about white guilt, white privilege, all this sort of stuff. So I think it's actually the opposite problem. And you look at now, even with the flag that's being politicized, the country's flag is being politicized by this current government. That just shows you the level of...
It's been politicized by the right of politics, Sunil, not by the current government.
Having a flag there's nothing political about waving the Great British flag. And I think anyone that's politicizing it is causing...
Well, it depends on the motive, doesn't it? It depends on the motive behind it.
Okay, one at a time. Sunil first.
I don't think there's anything wrong in any capacity of wearing the Great British flag, regardless of your skin colour, who you are. I think it's the most unifying thing for this country. And I think it's only in this country and maybe other parts of the West that this is an issue. Everywhere else in the world laughs at what we do when we make our flag politicized. It should be uniting the country. It should be proudly worn by people. And the fact that there are parts of this country and people saying that by doing a flag you're dividing the country is absurd.
Final word from Matthew Hulbert.
Yeah, I think, on the flag debate, I think it depends on the motive of those who are putting them up. And I question I stress some of the motives of the people that do that.
Okay, well, thank you both very much. Matthew Hulbert, the Lib Dem activist. We'll see you next Wednesday in the studio. And Sunil Sharma, political commentator. I appreciate you both joining us on the programme this evening. Jay's been in touch and says if our taxes are raised further for reparations, there will be civil war in this country. We've had enough and are not responsible for the current ills of ex-African colonies. Debbie says we've already given the African nations reparations. They have electricity, water, hygiene, technologies, cars, etc. done. Lots on the banknotes as well. Bill in Fleet says the decision to choose UK wildlife for the new notes was made after a public consultation last year. Also, Alison in St Albans says, could you please explain Carl Turner's answer to my question? I have no idea what he was saying. So, Alison, the quick version of it as the news comes up is that, no, those lawyers, the Society of Labour Lawyers, did not give their views to the MPs. They gave them to the ministers who are in the government, but not to the MPs. They were prevented from doing so. So, as far as I remember what you said earlier, and it was a bit earlier on the show, Alison, I may have got it wrong. Your question was, were they prevented from doing so? Yes, they were. And Carl Turner essentially said that was wrong and shouldn't have happened. Martin is in touch as well and says it's the council the lady Susie needs to speak to. I think she can get a home adoption grant. Well, she is in touch with her local council and indeed the Disabilities Minister and her local MP as well. So we'll see what happens with that, and of course we'll bring you updated information here on Talk. Plenty more to talk about in the next hour here on Talk. Get your call in too and we'll talk soon.
across the UK, on DAB+, on YouTube, on your mobile, and on your side. This is Talk.
Well, Donald Trump has said the war is easier than the US thought it would be. He's on his feet right now in Kentucky. We'll perhaps bring you a little bit of that in a minute or two if he is in fact talking about Iran. We're also talking about the Winston Churchill image on notes and why that's changing. The Mandelson files, a big story today, as is the banning of the Al-Quds March, this hate march. We'll talk about whether Trump tells lies as well. The BBC's international editor has said that on the record, that he believes Donald Trump is a liar. We'll talk about all of that. We'll make sure we get as many of your calls in as well. 0344 499 1000 is the number to call. You can text me 87222 with the word talk in your text. You can tweet me at talkTV, follow me at Peter Cardwell, or on Instagram at CardwellPeter. You can also send me a WhatsApp text message or a WhatsApp voice message, less than a minute please. If you send those voice notes through, we'll play some of them before 10 o'clock. You can also give me a ring, of course, on the main number 0344 499 1000. So much to discuss between now and 10 o'clock, and indeed every night this week here on Talk. Stay with us. Well, big changes in the military strategy. Iran's military saying that British cargo ships in the Gulf are now legitimate targets. This is the Islamic Republic's Joint Command threatening the US, Israel and their allies with attacks on vessels passing through the Strait of Hormuz, that area where we know so much oil in tankers moves, as the countries continue their bombing campaign against Iran. Iran says it would shift from reciprocal hits to continuous strikes, and the oil price, of course, is going up as a result of that too. Meanwhile, Donald Trump has claimed that war is easier than the US thought it would be. This is the same day a draft report has been found that the US is likely responsible for a deadly strike on an Iranian school. We also know the International Energy Agency agreed to record the release release of oil reserves. There's a lot happening here, and our guide through it is Colonel James Sunderland, former Conservative MP and of course former senior officer in the UK Army. Tell us your thoughts about British ships being targeted here, James, because so much that has been attempted anyway has been a very, very clear attempt by Keir Starmer to keep us out of this as much as possible.
Yeah, this is nothing new. I think that British ships have been targeted before. If you go back to last year, look at the attacks by the Houthi on British shipping. But it's all fair game. You saw on the news today about the Thai sailors rescued by the Omani forces. I just suspect that Iran is hell-bent on causing as much mischief and chaos in the Strait of Hormuz as possible. Why? Because that harms Western economies. It puts the oil price up. It means that countries like the UK and 31 others have to draw onto their oil reserves. So this is all about Iran doing what it needs to do, what it wants to do, to destabilise the Middle East.
Yeah, very, very interesting on that. There's also an allegation anyway that old intelligence, out-of-date intelligence, could be to blame for the Iranian school strike. There's NBC News reporting this, talking about the US strike in an Iranian school that killed more than 165 people. This has really become something of a symbol for many people's opposition to what the US has done here. What's your understanding of this, James?
Well, my understanding, Peter, is the same as yours. It depends upon what is an open source at the moment. I suspect the Americans probably do know more, but for reasons that you can understand, perhaps, they're not being as forthcoming as they might want to be. What I would say is that war is a messy, dirty business. There are no winners. And, for a missile to have hit a school and killed so many school children and their teachers is just appalling. Hearts go out to them, because there cannot be women and children as collateral damage in warfare. I mean, I think that ultimately we would have a certain sympathy for any aggressor if the targets were legitimate, they were military, if they were command and control targets, air defense targets, nuclear targets in the case of Iran. Iranian shipping, I think that's probably fair game, to use a common parlance. But this alleged attack on the school, which was clearly in error if it happened at all, is deeply regrettable.
certainly. It's been interesting as well seeing the reaction, or indeed lack of reaction, to those Iranian footballers, the female footballers in Australia, who have 5 of them who have defected. I don't know about you, James, but there's been a yawning silence from the woke brigade, from Gary Lineker, from Ian Wright, from the Lionesses, from many people who have many things to say, actresses, models, whoever, who have a huge amount to say on Palestinian children, who have a huge amount to say about human rights and women's rights, but seem to have absolutely nothing to say about these 5 extremely brave women, and the first thing they did was take off their headscarves.
Yeah, we have seen double standards, sadly, in public life, and it's very easy to sort of take one side above the other. What I would say is that these 5 Iranian footballers are very brave to do what they've done, and I think ultimately it's simple. If you consider that the Iranian regime has murdered many thousands this year of its own people, it is a brutal, repressive regime. Iranian expats in the UK tend by nature to be very critical of the Iranian government. I think we should be offering these 5 brave ladies all the support that the Western world can muster. And, it's all very well taking a stand on Palestine, and they're not necessarily wrong, but if you take a stand on Palestine, you also need to take a stand on other aggressor nations who are treating their own people appallingly.
And I have certainly, as you say, the same standard applied to all of them. What do you think about how Donald Trump is dealing with this? He's claimed the war is easier than the US thought it would be. We had some strange contradictory statements previously as well about what Pete Hegseth was saying, and then Donald Trump saying, well, actually things are coming to an end. What is your view on this and where we are in this military campaign and this war on Iran?
Well, Peter, I said right at the beginning that Iran was massively overmatched by US and Israeli weapons. I mean, the US and Israel have got state-of-the-art weapons, missiles that are accurate literally to the eye of a needle, plus F-35, stealth aircraft, B-2 bombers, the list goes on. The Americans and the Israelis, of course, did degrade the Iranian air defences very early on. I saw the news today about more Iranian ships being sunk by the Americans. So in terms of being easy, when you've got relative air supremacy or air superiority, and you've degraded their defences to the point where they are literally unable to defend themselves, no wonder it's easy. You could fire a missile at any target, it's going to hit that target. But what I would say, of course, is the fact that this is still a campaign at range. This is still a campaign involving long-range missiles. It's still involving aircraft. We're not yet at the point where we're putting boots on the ground. And at the point at which you commit ground troops to any operation, that becomes a very different kind of theatre to operate in, and very dangerous indeed. So I would say, yes, it's easy in terms of the remote precision warfare that we're currently seeing, but there's no sign yet of regime change, and that for me was always going to be one of their primary objectives.
Yes, and it's interesting with regime change because there seem to be some contradictory messages, or at least a changing, sort of evolving narrative, shall we say, about what America actually wants. I just wonder, with the objectives and everything you've heard, what you think those are. I mean, it's about making sure that Iran doesn't have nuclear capacity, but how committed do you think the Americans are to regime change?
Well, I think the Americans have got a taste for it now. You look at Syria, you look at last year's bombing campaign in Iran, you look at Venezuela. Donald Trump clearly has a taste for this, and he's at the settler score. The Israelis certainly have always been the enemy of Iran. So in terms of motives, you can get an awful lot by looking at the targets that are being prosecuted. So we are seeing individuals targeted, members of the regime targeted. We're seeing air defense systems, we're seeing nuclear sites, we're seeing navy. So this is all about degrading the Iranian military, but it's also about stopping Iran from being that regional aggressor, that pariah nation that's executed proxy wars through Hezbollah, through Houthi, through Hamas. And I think this is all about making sure that Iran doesn't pose a threat to other Arab nations for the foreseeable future.
It's interesting that Nigel Farage has said Iran is a bigger threat than Russia. Do you agree with him?
No, I suspect that Russia is a much bigger threat. Don't forget, for the UK, Russia's much nearer. We've already got war on European soil. We've got the Russian attack and invasion of Ukraine. That is very real. Ukraine is not far away, just the other side of Poland, just the other side of Germany. So this is very, very real, and should be a lot more evident in people's consciousness, perhaps, than what's happening in the Middle East. It just so happens that the world's media is currently camped in the Middle East. We're seeing the Iranian conflict played out every night on our TV channels, but the Russian threat, particularly Ukraine, hasn't gone away at all.
Yeah. Donald Trump saying that the US is not finished yet. In Iran, it also says that the US has knocked out 58 Iranian naval ships. He's on his feet right now in Walton in Kentucky. I just want to ask you, before you go, James, about something the BBC's international editor, Jeremy Bowen, has said. This is what he said on Radio 4 this morning.
Perhaps analysts and commentators have let their distaste for Donald Trump cloud their judgment. Maybe it doesn't matter that he insults allies whose soldiers fought and died alongside Americans in other Middle Eastern wars, or that sometimes he tells lies.
I mean, we often shy away from calling people liars. I just wonder, given that the BBC's international editor has said that it's fine to call Donald Trump a liar, what you think about that, James?
Well, it's quite a bold shout, considering that Donald Trump has threatened to sue the BBC for editing programmes and recordings in the past. I mean, it's quite clear that the BBC has no love for Trump at all. Jeremy Bowen is a respected journalist. He's got his own view. I wouldn't necessarily use those words, but what I would say is that, like or loathe Trump, you can't ignore him. And right now, he is dominating world headlines with what he's doing at the White House.
Absolutely. Colonel James Sunderland, former Conservative MP, thank you for joining me this evening. Lots in that. We'll talk a bit more about what Jeremy Bowen has said there, the international editor of the BBC. We'll also talk about whether you believe that Trump tells lies, and whatever your thoughts on it, let me know. 0344 499 1000. He is saying there in Walton in Kentucky that the US has knocked out 58 Iranian naval ships, and that is what he's saying. In regard to reparations, quite a number of people getting in touch. Leslie says, Peter, I'm sick of the UK being the cash cow for other countries. When is it the UK's turn for reparations? If we go back far enough, we must be due billions. Paul in Australia says, ask the African countries to ask Trump for reparations and see what happens. Also, I think the government has enough going on not to bother about the changing face on banknotes. And actually, that's something that a number of people have been in touch with. Tad also says, those who want to pay reparations should pay for them. So how about they crowdfund it to see if the rest of us paying for something we resent and disagree with? Churchill on the banknote is something that Jim in Liverpool wants to talk about. Jim, you're very welcome to the programme. Jim's given me a ring on 0344 499 1000. What would you like to say this evening, Jim?
Hello, I'm a serving soldier. I'm a captain of the British Armed Forces, by the way, and I'm black, by the way.
Okay.
Okay. I don't know if it matters. Churchill's my hero as well. Mm-hmm. I'm currently serving in Nakateri at the minute. I've done my Afghan deployments and stuff, multiple, just a few Afghan deployments. I will wave the Union Jack above and beyond.
Yes.
Because it supported my family, supported other people through things as well. But Article 5 should be a thing. My family, my wife, my daughter was in accommodation in Nakateri when that one hit. Article 5 should be a thing.
Okay. So
last time, sorry for interrupting.
No, go ahead, Jim.
See, it's a wee bit different. I get it. When 9/11 happened, Sovereign Territory,
yes,
in New York, was US. They invoked Article 5,
and it's only ever happened once, hasn't it, in NATO's history? But you think it should perhaps happen again?
Sovereign Territory. Mm-hmm. That's like hitting London, Liverpool, Manchester, any British. You know, come on.
Yeah. So you think it should happen again, Jim?
I do, yes, 100%, because it's British sovereign territory.
Okay. Well, listen, thanks.
At a basic level, if I've had a family competition with family, with our counterparts,
yes,
our wives, our kids, our dependents, pretty much, that's what it comes down to.
Okay. Well, Jim, listen, thanks for your points and thanks for your service to your country as well. Really interesting to speak to Jim in Liverpool there. Whatever you think about what he said or what Jim Sunderland said or what our callers, texters and tweeters are saying, you let me know. 0344 499 1000. Plenty of time for calls between now and 10 o'clock. And on Jeremy Bowen, who we're going to talk about more in a second, with Elisa in Chelmsford says, Jeremy Bowen is not a respectable journalist. He is biased, pathetic and unprofessional, and I object to my licence fee paying his wages. What a vile man, in Elisa's opinion. Plenty more to talk about with all of this, so stay with us here on Talk.
Conflict breaks out anywhere in the world, it has consequences here at home. Talk War is your definitive national security briefing. From the conflict in Ukraine to the tensions in Gaza and the latest escalation with Iran, this is where you'll find comprehensive comment and expert analysis with multiple updates throughout the day. The Talk War podcast from Talk, available on the Talk app or wherever you get your podcasts.
Current affairs, international news, letting criminals off while sending... Oi! Oi! You shut up! I'm trying to record something. Stand by for 3 powerhouse hours of breaking news, challenging views. I don't give a flying damn about international law. I think people will viscerally reject this.
Across the UK. On DAB+, on YouTube, on your mobile, and on your side. This is Talk.
Thank you to someone who wants to remain anonymous who sent in a message just about what Susie was saying to us about 45 minutes ago. Susie, who is disabled and is trying to get out and about in a wheelchair, but she can't get the right one for her, and her current one isn't working correctly. There's been a big problem with it, and the NHS really aren't helping her. This person says, "Evening, Peter. I'm in a similar position to Susie. I've got bipolar. I'm also a full-time caregiver for my elderly father. I've had to give up a well-paid career to do this for him. I applied for PIP in December. The DWP still haven't made a decision. I contacted my local MP. She was brilliant. She got in touch with people in the Department of Work and Pensions, and they're finally getting a move on. Funny, it took her intervention to speed them up. So there's a lot in that, and there are a lot of people who are having problems with the Department of Work and Pensions. This person also says, loving the new time slot. Well, thank you. I am too, I must say. Nick says, Churchill was arguably a short, fat, alcoholic racist, an MP that wouldn't survive modern politics for 30 seconds. However, let's not forget, without him, we would probably be speaking German and driving German cars. So lots to think about on that. I want to talk about, well, a couple of things now with Matt Bilinski, who is an attorney and also host of the Prevailing Narrative podcast. He joins us from California. Matt, you're very welcome to the programme. How are you doing?
I'm doing great, Peter. Thanks for having me.
You may be doing less great when you hear what I'm about to tell you, which is that Iran is apparently plotting a drone attack on California as retaliation for the war. This FBI alert alerting Californian law enforcement to potential Iranian drone strikes on the West Coast in retaliation for the US war against the Islamic Republic. ABC News have said that Iran allegedly aspired to conduct a surprise attack using unmanned aerial vehicles from an unidentified vessel off the coast of the United States homeland, specifically against unspecified targets in California in the event that the US conducted strikes against Iran. Just tell us your thoughts on this and how worried you are, man.
Yeah, I'd caution people to take these FBI alerts with a grain of salt because they can refer to things that are just being discussed theoretically, right? Or in terms of intention, right? I've seen enough times where Iranian officials have screamed death to America, and certainly that communicates an intent to do harm to Americans, but does that really, one, communicate or indicate any sort of, one, capability, or two, credible imminent attack? And actually, if you go speaking, LAPD officials just went on record saying that they have no knowledge of any tangible threat to the West Coast. So this typically is, some of these alerts, once you dig under, kind of pull back one of the layers here, can be just referencing a theoretical risk that they want people to be aware of, as opposed to knowledge that an attack is in the process of being planned and or imminent or effectuated, if not for the FBI or law enforcement's attempts to prevent it. And also, however many times people have heard of supposed sleeper cells that, listen, if we take aggressive action against certain Islamic terrorist forces and or foreign nations, that there are sleeper cells that are going to be activated. How many times does that actually come to be true? How many actual incidents of violence can be attributed to these so-called sleeper cells that these countries apparently have here planted in order to wreak havoc if we ever, step out of line or take action against them? I can't recall any instances of that anytime in the recent past. So I think this is kind of something that'll fall in a similar bucket. So I'm not too concerned.
What do you think Donald Trump actually wants here? Does he want regime change? Does he want, well, certainly he wants a non-nuclear Iran, that's very clear. But I mean, he's saying that it's going much better than expected. He says it's coming to an end. Pete Hegseth seems to be saying slightly different things. Are we getting a confused message from the administration?
I definitely think the messaging has been fragmented, but that doesn't mean that there still aren't identifiable objectives that can be accomplished and may, in fact, be on the way to being accomplished. I think regime change is a nice to have. It's certainly something we'd like to have, but I don't think that success or failure for America in this conflict, it will be a function of whether or not regime change is a direct result in the near future of this military operation. I believe that Donald Trump, and you could have different opinions on how tangible he can position Iran for potential subsequent regime change internally from revolutionary forces. But if he believes that he has weakened the regime and essentially defanged their military capabilities, that whether it's today, 6 months from now, or a year from now, the fall of the current regime, or at least its no longer being able to operate in the manner that it has for the past 45 years as a functioning sovereign ruler of this nation with functioning and threatening military capabilities. As long as he's removed that threat, which I do believe is realistic within the next couple of weeks, I think that we could. That is, I think, an identifiable goal and objective, despite some of Trump's kind of sometimes hazy messaging about it.
How much appetite is there in the American public for further action in Iran? Certainly, I would imagine that ground troops are not something that is really seriously being considered, but presumably the American public would not be happy about that. I just wonder how divided America is over this.
Yeah, I think even the American general public is still deciding how divided they are, right? Because nothing succeeds like success. Americans like success, and if they believe that a military operation, regardless of how risky, is headed towards a successful conclusion, you'd be shocked how quickly the polls changed on an instant. You saw it with Venezuela. It was very when people were scoping it out. Overthrowing Maduro was not very popular, and then when it was done pretty cheaply and neatly and without much fallout, you would be shocked at how the polls just skyrocketed in approval. I think you'll see something similar here with Iran. You can even see it with the polls. They polled the public on, if the Iran conflict lasts for this amount of time, do you support it? And the shorter this lasts, the more support it's going to get. I think, ground troops are definitely a risk for the administration. I don't think it would get a lot of support unless the American public believed that this was a really limited incursion just to clean up a situation that we had already pretty much gotten in order. I think we could probably get away with a small ground force in that regard, but a large-scale, massive ground force like we saw with Iraq, no, I don't think you'll find any support for that.
Matt, I just want to play you a little clip of what was broadcast on the BBC this morning. This was from their international editor, Jeremy Bowen. This is what he said.
Perhaps analysts and commentators have let their distaste for Donald Trump cloud their judgment. Maybe it doesn't matter that he insults allies whose soldiers fought and died alongside Americans in other Middle Eastern wars, or that sometimes he tells lies.
Are the BBC just trolling Donald Trump now? He is suing them, of course, for doctoring a clip, getting him to say something through editing that he didn't say. I just wonder, from across the pond, what your view on this is, Matt.
Yeah, I think even some people that don't necessarily support or like Donald Trump, Americans domestically at this point, can acknowledge that traditional legacy media sources are going to slant left and not really give him a fair shake, regardless of whether or not they are spouting demonstrable inaccurate facts about him, or, like in that BBC clip, simply trying to express their suspicion and or disdain, or otherwise cast a bit of a.
Do you think Trump's a liar, Matt?
I think that's a relative term. I think that compared to maybe a person you yank off the street, maybe he is. Compared to other people in positions of political power, I think Donald Trump, there's a strong case to be made that he's less of a liar than the regime, administration that preceded him, in that he simply gives uncomfortable truths or sometimes puffery with more brash language, but that the other members of the American political economy are just as big liars, but they do it with better vocabulary and with a smile on their face.
It's a very interesting point. Where do you think the legal action goes now? Because clearly there's no love lost between Donald Trump and the BBC.
Yeah, this is interesting because this is a place where there's a really demonstrable difference in the defamation and free speech law between the U.S. and the UK.
Yep.
Much higher bar in the U.S. You have to really, he would only have a successful case if he could prove that there is a demonstrable statement of fact, right? A disprovable fact that they defamed him with, and that they did so because it's a public figure, did so with malice in order to injure him, which I imagine, theoretically he could prove. In the UK, the bar is a lot lower. So if there are questionable, hazy opinions or statements that, could suggest or imply facts, but aren't direct statements of facts, those cases in the UK might go a little farther. So Donald Trump, I can't say that he's always thought through his legal action against media sources, but I think recently he's been a little more disciplined about that. So, I think that the BBC has some reason for concern.
Okay, Matt, great to talk to you. First time, hopefully not the last time. Matt Belinsky there, who's an attorney and host of the Prevailing Narrative podcast, speaking to us from California there, where Iran is allegedly plotting drone attacks. The FBI alerting California law enforcement to potential Iranian drone strikes. We have no additional information on the timing, method, target or perpetrators of this alleged attack. Yeah, we just think it's coming, essentially, the FBI have said, and the White House declining to comment on the story, certainly, but Mexican drug cartel drone usage also picked up in recent months as well. Lots to think about on that one. There are lots of stories that people want to get in on as well. Reparations, Mandelson, this story that Isabel Oakeshott, this talk exclusive on the girl who converted to Islam and was married at 16 illegally by an imam, on banknotes, on Starmer, on Iran, on blasphemy. So many different people want to get in, and we're going to take the next half an hour of the programme, the last half an hour of the programme. We're going to try and do this every night if people want to talk, if there are enough calls, essentially, if there are enough people who answer their phone. And if you do ring us early in the programme, please do pick up your phone at this time of the evening as well if we ring you back, because some people sort of ring at 7:20 and then, maybe they've gone to bed by that stage. Lots of people in touch, and we will go to calls in a second. Let me just read out some different messages here. Sarah near Plymouth says, how far has this country sunk? Leslie says, who tells the most lies, Starmer or Trump? Mark says, I wonder if Jeremy Bowen would call Keir Starmer a liar. Well, I do wonder about that. Why is it okay to call the President of the United States a liar, but perhaps no other people? I'm not sure who else Jeremy Bowen has called a liar. Sarah also says, I have to pay £10,000 a year for an outdoor powered wheelchair. £10,000 every 4 to 5 years for an outdoor powered wheelchair. I have cerebral palsy and can walk indoors, albeit increasingly unsteadily. This means I can't have an NHS outdoor powered wheelchair, says Sarah. So thank you for that. Lots of people reacting to that. Whatever you want to say, however you want to say it, give me a shout. 0344 499 1000. We'll take your calls, text, tweets and voice notes right up to 10 o'clock. We'll also have a chat with Petri Hoskin, who is, of course, on the air between 10 and 1 about what's coming up on her programme. Stay with us here on Talk.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on YouTube, on your mobile, and on your side. This is Talk. Oh.
Reparations are a big topic we've been talking about tonight. The African Union talking about whether they can get reparations out of us, the British taxpayer. What does Dean in Norwich think about this? He's given me a ring on 0344 499 1000. Dean, you're very welcome to the programme. What would you like to say?
It's all very well everyone stating that we should be paying reparations to Africa, but Africa were the country that sold all these slaves. So why is no one asking Africa to pay reparations?
Well, it's a very good point, and there are lots of other historical examples of countries that sold slaves, and I wonder whether you think the UK is being demonised.
I think Starmer's just a sellout, to be honest.
Why do you think that?
Because he's destroying everything about this country.
What are the things he's doing that you don't like, Dean?
Well, whether you want to go to the Chagos Islands, whether you want to go to the Waspy women, whether you want to go to the pensioners, the farmers, the list is endless.
Yeah. And how do you think he's dealt with the Peter Mandelson aspect today, the release of all these files? What do you think of that?
Well, not to be labelled as a conspiracy theorist, but you've got to think to yourself, what does Mandelson have on all these people?
It's a reasonable question, because I don't know why he was appointed in the first place.
Well, the guy's a dodgy guy, to put it easily and diplomatically, as he is a diplomat or was a diplomat.
That's right. Yeah. Well, listen, thanks for your thoughts, Dean. He certainly denies any wrongdoing anyway, but it's clear that, well, he's been arrested. We'll see what happens with that. He hasn't been charged yet anyway. Dean in Norwich, thank you. Thanks also to the person who's made me aware of the fact that while we have been on air this evening, Hezbollah has fired over 150 rockets and about 20 drones towards northern Israel. So that's happening right now. I know we have quite a number of viewers and listeners in Israel. Some of them even listen in the shelters that they have been gone down, that they're being told to go down to for their own safety as well. We'll continue to monitor what's happening there and with the Iran situation. Let's go to John in Kent, who has some thoughts on the banknotes. John, you're very welcome to the programme. What would you like to say?
Back in the when I spoke to your researcher, I said to him about a 9-bob note, and I don't think he knows what I was talking about.
He's probably too young to know what a 9-bob note is.
Exactly that. A lot younger than me.
He's a lot younger than me, John. But I know a 9-bob note is not something that it's like a £4 note.
Yeah. But it was saying. I mean, you was if you're talking about Peter Mandelson saying, yeah, you're bent as a 9-bob note, like, you know, dodgy and all that.
Yeah.
And I think if they did bring out one, the face of the earth would be on it, be Starmer's.
Starmer, right. And what do you think about Churchill being taken off the fiver then, John?
That's terrible, isn't it? It's terrible. That's the way this country's going, like, so.
Yeah.
I honestly, I'll say my mate today, I think in 10 years' time, this country will be fully Muslim.
You think so?
Christianity will go, yeah, absolutely.
You're worried about a takeover, are you?
Well, I think I'll be around by then, but anyway.
Okay, well, John, listen, thanks for your thoughts. Appreciate it. John in Kent there. Herbie's in Harrow and wants to talk about Mandelson. Herbie, what are your thoughts on this?
Good evening.
Good evening.
Peter, what do I think of it? Disgusting and disgraceful. How can a man demand £500,000 for failing and lying about a job that he got given to him by another nutcase called the Prime Minister? He should pay him the money himself because he's the one who employed him, not us. It's always coming out of our pocket for the mistakes they make.
Well, he got a mere. He asked for £500,000, as we know, Herbie. He got a mere £75,000. He shouldn't have got 75p.
Exactly, and Starmer can pay for it. I mean, so why do we have to keep on paying for these damn mistakes that this government keeps on making your life and my life a misery and everybody else's? What is going on in the world today?
Why do you think they appointed Mandelson in the first place, Herbie?
Well, I think he's a bully. Personally, I think he's a man of thinking he's better than anybody else. And I think he's paying the price for his lies and his deceit and his bulliness. You know, I really think he deserves what he's getting, to be honest.
What about what Starmer deserves? Because certainly his chief secretary, this guy Darren Jones. Actually, maybe we could have a look at that clip. Actually, of what Darren Jones said in Parliament. Just hold on there for a second, Herbie. I'll come back to you. But what Darren Jones said about Keir Starmer taking responsibility for the Peter Mandelson situation.
The Prime Minister has taken responsibility for Peter Mandelson's appointment as ambassador to the United States. He has acknowledged it was a mistake and has apologised, not least for believing Peter Mandelson's lies. There are specific documents that this government would like to have been able to disclose today, but which the Metropolitan Police have asked us not to do so yet. We have agreed to that request. We will therefore publish these documents in the future as soon as the Metropolitan Police have confirmed it will no longer prejudice their investigation.
Herbie, are you convinced by what Darren Jones said there? Are you convinced that Starmer has taken proper responsibility for this situation?
Oh, don't be silly, Peter. They lie through their damn teeth. They knew. If he knew this, and why did he do it? Why did he carry on employing him? The man is trying to make us all look stupid. Look, the man had the information that he was told by the security people, do not employ him, do not make this man the ambassador for America. What did he do? He went and done it. He went ahead with it regardless. The man doesn't listen, Peter. It's as simple as that. He doesn't listen to anything or anybody about what's going on in this country today. He doesn't care. You know, the man is just unapproachable to do anything right. He doesn't do anything right. He does everything wrong. You know, it's just madness. It makes my blood boil when I hear what he's trying to do. He doesn't achieve anything. And as regarding the fiver, what's he want to do? Put him on the £5 note? Of Prime Minister? Oh, lovely. What a lovely thing to have. God, Peter, I'm really ashamed of this country at the moment. I really am. I really fear for my grandchildren.
Herbie, thanks for your thoughts. Herbie and Harrow there, appreciate him giving me a ring, and you can too. We've got 20 minutes to have the discussion before Petri Hoskin comes up with her show with all new types of discussion and maybe some of what we've talked about today as well. Petri will be here between 10 and 1, but 20 minutes more of me. I want to speak to Simon in Sevenoaks, who has some views on Iran and the situation there. He's given me a ring on 0344 499 1000. Simon, you're very welcome to the programme. What would you like to say?
Thanks, Peter. I tuned in late and I heard someone talking about Article 5 of the NATO Treaty in respect of RAF Akrotiri. Now, the thing is, there's a lot of misconception and it's a particularly nuanced view because, I mean, even our Deputy Prime Minister doesn't understand it.
He's not very nuanced, though, is he?
No, this is true.
When I think of the word nuance, I don't automatically think David Lammy.
You said that, not me. But But basically, what people misunderstand about Article 5 of NATO, which just to clarify, is attack on one is an attack on all.
Yes.
It's a snapshot in history. For us as a founding member, it's the 24th of August 1949. It's British territory above the Tropic of Cancer at the signature of the treaty.
Okay, so if British territory has been added to since then, presumably if it's taken away, that it's sovereign territory of someone else, but if it's added to, or it's a base or something like that, it doesn't quite fit. It's not part. It's not part of it. I mean, Cyprus was covered up until independence because it was British territory, but upon independence, then it fell out of the treaty. All that. How do you know all this stuff, Simon? You know loads of stuff about this.
Military history and things like that are a hobby, but I also served in NATO headquarters.
Ah, okay. So you know it back to front.
In Bielefeld and Bosnia, so I'm quite versed in NATO agreements and things like that. But basically, what happened when Cyprus gained independence, it fell out of the treaty.
Right.
So in order to cover it again, Cyprus would need to reapply to join NATO, but it can't do that because the alliance refuses to import hostility and territorial claims into the alliance.
Yes, because Cyprus is a divided country. It's interesting within that, Simon, that you mentioned that. So really, there hasn't been an attack in terms of NATO anyway on British sovereign territory. So what Jim was saying a bit earlier on.
There has been an attack on British sovereign territory.
Yeah.
Basically, it's an act of war.
But it's not covered by the treaty. Is that right?
But it's not covered by the NATO treaty for Article 5 purposes, which is why we cannot invoke it. The same situation applied with the Falkland Islands in 82.
Right.
In the Falkland Islands are situated below the Tropic of
Cancer. Yeah. I've learned a huge amount from this call, Simon. Listen, thank you very, very much. How do you think things are going in Iran?
I think it's going well for the Americans at the moment, but to effect regime change, he's going to need some sort of boots on the ground, and whether that's the Kurds or something else, I don't know.
There doesn't seem to be appetite for it.
The easy bit. For the Americans, this is the easy bit.
Yeah.
But what comes next is the bit they're not very good at. So
how long did you serve in uniform, Simon? How long did you serve in uniform?
Just short of 10 years, but it was long enough.
Right, well, thank you for your service to our country. Simon, ring me anytime. You're a mine of information on this stuff, and I really enjoyed chatting to you, so thank you very much. That's Simon in Sevenoaks there. I love history, and Simon really knew his stuff there. It was great to talk to him there. I just want to tell you about a chance we're giving you to win 2 hospitality tickets to the British Grand Prix. This is on Sunday, the 5th of July, with a full racing green trackside experience. This is the ultimate setup for race day. You're going to get exclusive grandstand seats at the Loop and Village Corners, plus inner track access to watch the drivers arriving at the paddock, and access to the hospitality shuttle bus for easy on-site transport, racing simulators and live music between sessions, all-day street food and an open bar. Listen up to find out how you could be in with a chance to win.
For your chance to win, text TALK to 83338. Text costs £2.50 plus your standard network rate. Or call 0343 418 7260. Lines close 20th of March 2026 at 4 p.m. That's when you need to answer your phone if it rings. 18 plus UK residents only. This is a network promotion. Full T's and C's at talk.tv/win. So for your chance to win, text TALK to 83338 now.
welcome to Down the Local, the show that goes from pub to pub across the country, speaking to the punters about the subjects driving us all nuts at the moment.
That's Rachel Reeves, Rachel Thieves, Rachel McCounts.
I don't really know Meghan Markle. I know Meghan Markle's from Suits, that's about it.
I don't know about anyone else, and I don't know where this is going. I have 0% beard, and I feel
Raising the flag, I think, is symptomatic of its desperation.
Is public transport good value for money?
No, it isn't.
You really don't like speaking to people.
When conflict breaks out anywhere in the world, it has consequences here at home. Talk War is your definitive national security briefing. From the conflict in Ukraine to the tensions in Gaza and the latest escalation with Iran, this is where you'll find comprehensive comment and expert analysis with multiple updates throughout the day. The Talk War podcast from Talk, available on the Talk app or wherever you get your podcasts.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on YouTube, on your mobile, and on your side. This is Talk.
Phil Connolly's been in touch on Twitter. He said, just listen to a normally reasonable Peter Cardwell suggest Jeremy Bowen was perhaps wrong to call the orange one, Donald Trump, a liar. There are times in life when it's just better to move on with but the mere shake of the head in disbelief. Phil, I mean, look, Donald Trump says things that aren't true. He is a liar. Is it the best idea for the international editor of the BBC to go along and say that? I mean, loads of politicians lie all the time. We know that they say things and then contradict themselves and do other things. But to do it in such a way, for such a high-profile journalist to do that, when he has to, presumably, at least try to interview Donald Trump at various points, is that the best way to do it? Maybe I'm wrong here, and Phil clearly thinks I'm wrong, and that's fine. What do you think? 10 minutes to let me know your thoughts on this. 0344 499 1000. But listen, thank you to Phil, and as Phil, sent a perfectly reasonable message there, and as I always say, we disagree without being disagreeable on my programmes. Let's hear from Joan in Sunderland about the banknotes. Joan, what's your thought on this? Thanks for the call.
Hello.
Hello.
I just wonder how these people at the Bank of England have nothing better to do.
It's a fair
think
point.
they would worry about the economy and things like that. But I've got a suggestion of what they could put on a banknote. I like them the way they are, but I can give them a new one. How about the Joker?
The Joker? Gosh, okay.
Yes, and while we're at it, when you look at this government, this Prime Minister and this government, that would do to cover the whole lot, because this country is turning into a joke. We are now the laughing stock of the world. I have never been so ashamed to be British.
Joan, it's interesting as well with the notes, because the Americans don't change their banknotes, for example. The euro notes, I don't think, as far as I know, haven't changed since 2000 when the euro was introduced. I mean, why do we need to change them?
We don't. I mean, the Americans are still proud of their eagle, and it's just ridiculous.
Yeah, they have different presidents on the banknotes, so that's a very straightforward one. You'd be happy with Churchill, or are there any other prime ministers or historical figures you'd want on those banknotes, Joan?
Well, certainly not Starmer.
Yes, I slightly picked that up. Joan, listen, thanks very much for the call. Really appreciate it. And Nigel Farage has been talking about this, about Winston Churchill and the banknote being changed to a beaver. This is what Nigel Farage has been saying about this.
Are great British banknotes produced by the Bank of England, and they have on them giant figures like Winston Churchill, and yet they're proposing we replace people like him with a picture of a beaver. No, I'm not making it up. This is actually what they're proposing. This is how PC mad and loony everyone's gone, including the Bank of England. I think it's absolutely crackers. But I want to know, please, what do you think?
What do you think? 0344 499 1000. Clive, it is in East London. I don't think he wants to talk about banknotes necessarily, but he does want to talk about Keir Starmer. Clive, I understand you giving us a ring for the first time, is that right?
Yes, that's my first time.
Oh, brilliant. Well, you're very, very welcome, and thanks for the call. What would you like to say?
I would like to talk about Keir Starmer. He's a traitor to his country.
Why do you think that, Clive?
because of what he's doing. He works all the way for the Muslims and all that. What about the indigenous people here?
You don't think he has? You don't think he has the indigenous people's view? I mean, Muslims, of course, can be indigenous too, but you don't think he has white British people's views? Maybe, is that what you're saying? Or I don't want to put words in your mouth, Clive, but what would you like him to do?
The colour doesn't actually mean nothing, but yes, I think he's, and the last government as well, they was just as bad.
Mm-hmm.
Do you know what I mean? And if this doesn't stop soon, this country's going to go to pot. Do you know what I mean?
I do, and there are a lot of people very, very worried about the direction of the country. What would you like the Prime Minister to do? What would your message to him be, Clive?
Call an election.
Okay, you want rid of him?
Yes, want rid of him. Maybe have reform.
Okay.
If the Conservatives messed up already.
Okay.
So maybe reform.
Clive, listen, thanks for the call. I appreciate it, and great that we're having, on these shows, we're having new callers, which is fantastic. Whether you're a new caller, whether you're somebody who rings up every now and again, like our next caller, Grace, always good to hear from her. She's given me a ring on 0344 499 1000. Whatever you want to say, however you want to say it, I'm always interested. I'm here tomorrow night and Friday night as well. Grace, what are your thoughts, and what would you like to say this evening?
Many things. Firstly, congratulations on getting so far through Lent. Halfway through.
I think I'm halfway through now off the Diet Coke, Grace. Are you off anything for Lent?
I'm not. I really should be, but because I've got those of us on the autistic spectrum have weird eating habits anyway.
Well,
so
it's probably best not to go down that road. But
eating disorder, it's all
it's best not to go down that road. But
more creative to give up instead of food.
I tell you something, Grace. I miss Diet Coke every day. Every day, about 22 days to go. Good Friday, I'm going to be having it. Some people stay until Easter Sunday, but that's a matter of personal preference, apparently. Anyway, more to the point, what do you want to say this evening?
Well, you mentioned earlier about reparations. We're not responsible for the sins of our ancestors. And since the previous caller said that people native to this country are Christians, I'll say that from a Christian perspective, sin indeed is not something that we necessarily just inherit from our ancestors. We have our own sins, and Jesus offers salvation from them. That's why we have Easter and Lent. But I do think, whilst we really cannot repair history, and I think there's quite a different worldview in some other cultures where they do have an idea about kind of a connection spiritually to ancestors, and I think that contributes to why they feel that they need to reparations, and whilst we don't see things that way. But we shouldn't be having to pay for things that other people did. However, there is still a ton of wealth coming from that part of the world to our part of the world. And there has been really unjust debt accumulated. I mean, we hear at the moment about student debt, and there's far more egregious unjust debt via which African countries are being really exploited by some of our banks and corporations. And to some extent, we benefit because we live in a relatively wealthy country that's been made rich through some of this colonialism and exploitation over the centuries. So I would say that whether or not you call it reparations, we need to cancel that unjust debt via which countries have had to pay far, far more than they ever borrowed in the first place.
There was a campaign, of course, Jubilee 2000, that did a lot of that, and we did cancel a lot of that debt. So much of it is racked up again. And I just wonder, I mean, the people clearly in those countries you're referencing are suffering very badly for that, but can we excuse if they have corrupt governments, for example, or people who, leaders who don't act responsibly? Should we always have to atone for that and keep atoning?
I mean, to some extent, some of those corrupt leaders have been helped to get into power by some of the things that some Western corporations and governments have done previously. But I mean, it was discussed that India, for example, is a formerly colonised country that's doing far better. And there has actually been academic research in economics to show how different systems of colonialism have put in place different structures that mean that formerly colonised countries do have different outcomes. But ultimately, if we enable people in the poorest parts of the world to support themselves because they don't have to keep on paying out ridiculous interest on debt that vulture fund capitalists have bought up, then they'll be able to develop more and fulfil their potential. But I don't think we can just leave people to starve just because they've got corrupt governments.
No, certainly, and I agree with that, Grace. So listen, thank you so much for your call. There does appear to be a bit of breaking news about one of the Iranian female footballers seems to have changed her mind and maybe going back to Iran. That's the only line I know at the meantime. For the moment, I haven't received any more information on that. If I get it in the next 4 minutes, I'll bring it to you. I would imagine Petri Hoskin will be covering that story if it develops. She's coming up between 10 and 1. Hello.
Hello there. Yes,
Hello.
indeed, we'll keep our eye on that. Yeah, and it seems that actually they've had to move the women as well, because when this woman who apparently wanted to go back to Iran changed her mind, the number was traced. So there's a concern about. So they had to immediately move those the other women to keep them safe.
We haven't heard very much from Gary Lineker on this, isn't it? About these repressed women who decided to defy the Iranian regime. Really odd, that, isn't it? How he doesn't seem to want to stand up for them.
Yeah, I mean, and these women are beyond brave.
Absolutely.
I mean, it's beyond brave. Can you imagine? You know, I get so annoyed when women's rights here go on about some really stupid things, like page 3, for example. It's like, oh, who cares? But then these women who didn't sing the national anthem, some removed their headscarves. That is bravery. That is real bravery.
Especially when you think of what might happen to their
families.
Yeah.
Exactly.
What's coming up in your programme?
Right, well, we keep hearing that our services are hollowed out. We've got no military. So I thought I'd ask and find out just what we've got. And really, if we can do anything in the Middle East, because it's very doubtful that we've got the weapons or the infrastructure or the kit to do it. We have amazing men and women in the military, but not enough of them. The way that these numbers have been cut are extraordinary. So I'm going to be looking into that, because people keep saying, oh, we haven't got any military. So I'm going to find out what we have got and if we have got any way of doing anything, and why we're a laughing stock around the world. Kevin Schofield will be here to talk about the Mandelson files. How quickly the name of the file changes. Epstein, Mandelson. So we're going to be talking about Mandelson, and actually Talkback is going to be